Chapter 860. Wuji waved his hand and said, Xuanjin is not a person who only cares about money. Is your instance dungeon a quest dungeon? N is a quest dungeon. You just need to clear it. Captain Don't Shoot said. That's good. Wuji said with a smile. We don't want money. We just want the income from the instance dungeon. How about that? Since Captain Don't Shoot's instance dungeon was a quest dungeon, it must be a hidden instance that had not been cleared yet. The reward for a hidden instance dungeon was generous, not to mention a first kill. Any good item that dropped could be sold for some money. It was definitely more cost-effective than the mark price. Hearing Wuji's words, Captain Don't Shoot had a troubled expression on his face. Only the income. Why? If Boss Captain is not willing, then please leave. Wuji said lightly and was about to leave. Xuanjin never did a losing business. Since it was a seller's market now, Wuji would definitely talk about the conditions that needed to be talked about. After all, Xuanjin had just made a windfall. They would not lower their heads for a mere 20,000 gold. Captain Don't Shoot saw that Wuji got up and was about to leave. He quickly ran over and pulled Wuji back. No. Since Wuji requested it, then do as you wish. I don't mind. That's right. Seeing that Captain Don't Shoot compromised, Wuji smiled. It's settled then. Let's not delay. Let's go now. Captain Don't Shoot said, Not yet. This instance dungeon only has one chance a week. We just failed once a few days ago. We have to do it tomorrow on Monday. That's good. Let's do it tomorrow. Remember to inform us. After saying that, Wuji stood up and greeted everyone. Then, he led Xuanjin out of the tavern. As soon as they left the tavern, Wang Yu said to everyone, You guys play first. I have to go offline. Damn, it's only noon and you're going offline. Why don't you play more during the weekend? There's still a weekend event in the afternoon. Seeing that Wang Yu was not attending to his duties, the Xuanjin people expressed their dissatisfaction. The weekend was the time for the double EXP buff and various activities and quests. This kind of benefit was only available once a week. Normally, Wang Yu would play until 6 in the evening. Today, it was not even 12 o'clock. It was indeed a bit unkind of him to want to leave. Wang Yu smiled and said, It's a bit personal. Activities. Everyone tried their best to persuade him to stay. Wang Yu waved his hand. Those things don't mean much to me. You guys can take this opportunity to narrow the gap between us, even though you know it's useless. F*CK. Get lost. Everyone was furious when they heard that. They wished they could give Wang Yu the middle finger. Looking at the angry crowd, Wang Yu chuckled and went offline. When Wang Yu went offline, he saw Mu Zixian rolling up her sleeves and preparing lunch in the kitchen. He quietly walked over and patted Mu Zixian's shoulder. Hey girl. After being patted by Wang Yu, Mu Zixian jumped in fright. She turned around and slashed the kitchen knife in her hand horizontally. Being able to retract and withdraw freely was an extremely difficult realm for a martial artist. Mu Zixian was even more unable to do it as an ordinary person. When Mu Zixian saw that it was Wang Yu behind her, the kitchen knife was less than 3 inches away from Wang Yu's arm. It was already too late for her to retract the knife. Fortunately, Wang Yu was not an ordinary person. He lightly leaned to the side and dodged Mu Zixian's kitchen knife. He also pulled Mu Zixian into his embrace. At the same time, he gave a light push. The kitchen knife in Mu Zixian's hand fell onto the chopping board with a thud. Are you trying to scare me to death? Mu Zixian was still in shock and fiercely stepped on Wang Yu's foot. Wang Yu also broke out in a cold sweat. It was fortunate that it was him just now. If it was someone else, that knife would have basically said goodbye to their right hand. I was just joking. Why did you have such a big reaction? Wang Yu chuckled. Nonsense. Look at your hoodlum tone. I thought there was a thief in the house. Mu Zixian used both hands to push Wang Yu out of the kitchen. This place is not for you to enter. Wait outside. That's true. I was just too happy. Wang Yu said excitedly. Wife, let's not cook today. Let's go out and eat. Oh, I heard that you guys made a fortune today. Mu Zixian had also just gone offline. She had heard about how Wang Yu and his group cheated only Martial Sovereign. We made a fortune, but that's just a small matter. There's something even more surprising. Wang Yu could not contain the excitement in his heart. Oh! Mu Zixin wiped her hands on her apron and walked to the kitchen door. She said with a straight face, "You found a mistress?" Wang Yu was speechless for a moment. He then said, "What nonsense are you talking about? I just broke through." Broke through? So fast. Mu Zixin was stunned when she heard that. She said in surprise, "Didn't you say it would take a few years?" Wang Yu was not an ordinary martial artist. Wang Yu had already reached the Grandmaster realm at such a young age. It would not be easy for him to take another step forward. In the martial arts circle, there were many Grandmasters in fist techniques. Although the leaders of the four aristocratic families were not as talented as Wang Yu, they were all geniuses. But without exception, all of them were stuck at this threshold. Just take Wang Yu's father, Wang Tianlong, for example. He had already reached the Grandmaster realm before the age of 30. Now that he was in his 50s, he still had not crossed this threshold. When Wang Yu said it would take a few years to break through, it was already a fast estimate. Now that he had successfully broken through in less than a few months, it was obviously a little unbelievable. Huh? Wang Yu laughed proudly. I have to thank the group of people from Invincible Martial Arts. Without them, I reckon it would be difficult for me to break through in a few years. Martial arts was originally a killing technique. Only through constant killing could one hone one's skills and break through to the highest realm. During this period of time, Wang Yu had been busy with the preliminaries. The quality of the opponents in the preliminaries was not very high, and the battles were at most small battles with 10 people from each side. Not to mention the group from Xuanjin, even if it was Wang Yu, it would be very easy for him to fight 10 people at once. Such battles were like a drop in the bucket for the experience that Wang Yu needed to feed his skills. However, today's battle with Invincible Martial Arts had greatly satisfied Wang Yu's combat needs. The people attacking Wang Yu were all elite experts. With more than 100 people besieging him, Wang Yu was forced into a desperate situation several times in a row. The potential of the human body was stimulated at times like this, and naturally, Wang Yu was no exception. Under the siege of Invincible Martial Arts, Wang Yu's potential was stimulated bit by bit, and in the end, his realm was finally stabilized. After that, Wang Yu experienced the deal between Wuji and the captain, "Don't shoot." Under the influence of Wuji's unscrupulous behavior to achieve his goals, he finally broke through the threshold that all boxing grandmasters could not cross. "Do you think I've changed?" Wang Yu asked Mu Zixin. Chapter 861. In the eyes of a couple, their other half was always stupid. Mu Zixin was not being objective when she said stupid. If it was Wuji and the others, they would definitely be able to see the change in Wang Yu. Kung Fu was a killing technique. Those who practiced martial arts would more or less have a ruthless aura. Today was a society governed by law. Those who fought fiercely would be sentenced to at least half a year in prison. Therefore, the more influential the family, the more they would pay attention to the cultivation of their mentality. As their martial arts became more profound, their ruthless aura would become more and more restrained. Wang Yu was only a 26-year-old young man after all. His mentality was not like those seniors. Although Wang Yu usually restrained his murderous aura, it was not perfect. It would occasionally show, and when he was agitated, it would be even more threatening. At this time, after the breakthrough, the murderous aura that Wang Yu occasionally showed was all restrained. The modesty, indifference, and fearlessness of a martial artist on Wang Yu was even more vivid. Looking at Mu Zixin's doting eyes, Wang Yu smiled happily. He put his arm around Mu Zixin's shoulder and said, "Let's go eat first. I still have to consolidate my realm later." After a breakthrough, consolidating one's realm was the most important step. The so-called consolidating realm was to exchange blows with experts and let the muscles and cells of the body remember the mysteries of this realm. However, in today's society, there were almost no martial artists, and there were even fewer experts. Therefore, if a martial artist wanted to consolidate his realm, he had to rely on external forces. Using the method of training the muscles, let the body understand a new realm. No matter how realistic the holographic online game was, the body in reality could not be trained. This was also the reason why Wang Yu was in a hurry to go offline. For an expert of Wang Yu's realm, the breakthrough was a once-in-a-hundred-years event. If he missed this opportunity for double experience with his intelligence, Wang Yu could forget about practicing martial arts. Consolidating realm? We haven't even settled the equipment in our house. In the past, Wang Yu did not know anything other than martial arts. Most of his conversations with Mu Zixian were about practicing martial arts. Over time, Mu Zixian could be considered half a martial arts encyclopedia. Of course, she understood the consolidation of realm that Wang Yu mentioned. However, with Wang Yu's family's current financial and material resources, it was simply not enough to support Wang Yu's consolidation of his realm. This was slightly embarrassing. Wang Yu smiled and took out a card from the drawer. That's not a problem. This. Mu Zixian saw the card in Wang Yu's hand and was slightly stunned. She suddenly said, "Isn't this the card that someone gave you?" Li Jian. Wang Yu nodded and said, Li Jian was the young man who had gone on a blind date with Ma Li. Mu Zixian had even splashed tea all over his face. Luckily, Wang Yu was skilled, so he didn't pursue the matter. In the end, he even gave him a card. Now that she thought about it, Mu Zixian's face was still burning. Looks like I was lucky to have accepted this card last time. I heard that place is quite popular. Even if you have money, you won't be able to go there to spend money, Mu Zixian said in a joyful tone. Madam Wang, you're the one with the foresight. Wang Yu flattered. Haha, you aren't simple either. To be able to find such a far-sighted wife like me, Mu Zixian said with a smile. Wang Yu said shamelessly, and the two of us aren't ordinary people. Go to hell. Mu Zixian smiled and pushed Wang Yu. Wang Yu had been to Li Jian's club before. It was only 2 stops away from Wang Yu's neighborhood. After eating, Wang Yu and Mu Zixian strolled to the entrance of the club. Li Jian's club was called Tianyuan Sports Center. It was the largest indoor fitness club in L City. Not only did it have basic facilities like a gym and swimming pool, but it also had a shooting range, indoor racetrack, and other large training bases. It was one of L City's iconic buildings. Li Jian had such a family business at such a young age. It was no wonder that his underling had bragged about his so-called family background. Looking at him now, he really wasn't bragging. What puzzled Wang Yu and Mu Zixian was how a girl like Ma Li could have such a high-class blind date. Even though there was freedom and love nowadays, it was still very important to find a suitable match. Especially for a person like Li Jian, he wouldn't find a small gold collector for no reason. Of course, although he was puzzled, Wang Yu wasn't as gossipy as Mu Zixian. He knew that everyone had their own secrets, and he wouldn't ask what he shouldn't ask. Now that Ma Li and Wang Yu didn't lack money, they would move out sooner or later. They were just tenants, and they weren't close enough to talk about everything. There was a saying that a big shop bullied its customers. This saying was definitely true. Just as Mu Zixian said, Li Jian's club didn't lack customers. Ordinary people wouldn't be qualified to enter even if they had money. The security guards and receptionists at the entrance were all enthusiastic, but their friendly but not intimate temperament showed that this club wasn't ordinary. Sir, how can I help you? Seeing Mu Zixian walk in with Wang Yu, the receptionist greeted them enthusiastically. Fitness, Wang Yu said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Please show me your fitness card. The receptionist was still enthusiastic. Wang Yu took out the card that Li Jian gave him and handed it over. The receptionist took it with both hands and looked at it. The smile on her face immediately changed. What's wrong? The receptionist at the side saw this strange expression on the girl's face and quickly came over. When she saw the card, she was so shocked that she cried out on the spot. This is a permanent card? It can't be wrong. It's a permanent card. The receptionist who first received Wang Yu said with certainty. The permanent card was the ultimate membership card of Li Jian's club. There were a total of 10 cards, and only 4 people had them. Other than Wang Yu, the other 3 were regular customers, and they were all people with great backgrounds. What made these employees most curious was the mysterious 4th person. Who exactly was he? He had never been here, even after registering for the card. Now that they saw the 4th card holder was just a commoner shopping with his wife, how could they not be surprised? Although Wang Yu was inexperienced, he wasn't stupid. Seeing the expressions on the 2 girls' faces, he seemed to have guessed something. So he whispered to Mu Zixian, It seems that Li Jian's card is quite valuable. Yeah, why don't we return it to him? Mu Zixian was completely a commoner. She bullied him, and he still gave her such a valuable thing. This made Mu Zixian feel insecure. As the saying goes, one shouldn't accept a reward without sowing. Mu Zixian knew how capable Wang Yu was. If Li Jian asked Wang Yu to do something, this wasn't a game. Thinking of this, Mu Zixian couldn't help but tug on Wang Yu's sleeve. Okay. Wang Yu patted Mu Zixian's shoulder and nodded. At that time, the two receptionists also recovered from their shock. Chapter 862. The permanent card holders were all important people. It was an unwritten rule to inform the boss when they came here to spend money. It was reasonable for the receptionist to inform Li Jian. I think it's better to inform him. Wang Yu looked at Mu Zixian and nodded. Wang Yu was still very obedient to his wife. In order to not let Mu Zixian worry, he already had the idea of returning the card to Li Jian. There was no such thing as an undeserved reward. Wang Yu was embarrassed to accept such an expensive thing from someone else. Okay, I'll help you inform him now. The receptionist responded and walked back to the front desk. She picked up the phone and made a call. At this time, Li Jian was meeting a guest in the office. He received a call from the receptionist and asked in confusion, "What's wrong? What happened? Didn't I say not to disturb me now? A Mr. Wang wants to see you." The receptionist's voice came from the phone. What, Mr. Wang or Mr. Li? Is it a guest? It had been a while. Li Jian was such a busy person that he had long thrown Wang Yu to the back of his mind. He had already forgotten that such a person existed. It's a guest, a permanent card guest, the receptionist said again. Permanent card? Li Jian was slightly stunned and said in surprise, "That's impossible. Weren't there only 3 permanent cards given out?" None of the 3 had the surname Wang. What's his card number? Number 1. The receptionist looked at the card in her hand. Li Jian was even more puzzled when he heard the receptionist say that. Isn't the number 1 card my card? As he said that, Li Jian habitually picked up his wallet on the table. He glanced at it and realized that his card was gone. Only then did he suddenly remember that his card had been given out not long ago. Thinking up to this point, Li Jian hurriedly said, "Let Brother Wang wait for a moment. I'll be there soon." After putting down the phone, Li Jian stood up and bowed to a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s. "Teacher Liang, I have to meet a guest now. Sorry, please excuse me." It was very impolite to leave halfway when discussing business with a guest. Even though Li Jian had already apologized, the middle-aged man who was addressed as Teacher Liang still had some dissatisfaction on his face. When Teacher Liang heard that, she frowned slightly and said unhappily, "What kind of guest is this?" He's so important that Director Li abandoned the guest in front of him and ran out. Li Jian said, "I'm really sorry. It's an old friend. He's also in your line of work." "Oh, really?" Originally, Teacher Liang was just a little emotional, but after hearing what Li Jian said, a hint of resistance suddenly appeared on her face. This Teacher Liang was also a martial arts practitioner. She was a martial arts expert that Li Jian had to beg for help to hire as a coach. The two of them had already discussed the issue of remuneration. Now that she heard that there was a colleague outside, Teacher Liang inevitably thought that it was a competitor that Li Jian had found. There were many martial artists with strange tempers. Li Jian had gone to great lengths to get Teacher Liang to come out of retirement. Teacher Liang also thought that this high-paying job was custom-made for her. Now that a competitor had suddenly appeared, how could she not be angry? However, Teacher Liang was a martial artist after all. The displeasure on her face was fleeting. Following that, Teacher Liang said with a fake smile, "It's a colleague. Then I'll have to go take a look and help you widen your eyes." Sure, Li Jian was a businessman, so how could he not know what Teacher Liang meant? It just so happened that Li Jian wanted to test Teacher Liang's martial arts, so he agreed immediately. In a short while, Li Jian and Teacher Liang arrived at the reception hall. At that moment, Wang Yu was sitting on the sofa and drinking tea with Mu Zixian. Wang Yu was still all right. He came from a large family and had an extraordinary bearing. Furthermore, he was dull and inexperienced, so he was very indifferent. Mu Zixian was a little embarrassed. It was true that this lady had seen the world, but she had still been at the bottom of society. It was inevitable that she would have stage fright when she suddenly came to such a high-class clubhouse. Her appearance of a commoner was revealed. Teacher Liang stood beside Li Jian. When she saw Wang Yu and his wife, she couldn't help but sneer in her heart. What martial artists? I think they're scammers. Of course, Li Jian had seen Wang Yu's real martial arts before. Now that he saw that it was really Wang Yu, he was very excited. Brother Wang, Li Jian greeted him from afar and went up to greet him. That, little Li, right? Wang Yu stood up and nodded with a smile. Why do you have time to come and play today? I haven't seen you for so long. I thought you forgot about my place, Li Jian said half-truthfully. It was true that Wang Yu didn't come. As for what he said later, if Wang Yu didn't come, this grandson would have forgotten about Wang Yu. Wang Yu smiled and said, I went back home recently and have been busy. See, I just improved my martial arts, so I came here. Oh, didn't Brother Wang train your martial arts to the peak? You can still improve? When Li Jian heard that, he was very surprised. Li Jian was also a person who loved martial arts. It was just that he didn't have a teacher. However, his understanding of martial arts wasn't inferior to Mu Zixian's. Although Li Jian hadn't seen other martial arts masters, he knew that a martial artist like Wang Yu was definitely at the top of the industry. It was amazing that someone at this level could still improve his realm. What are you saying? Wang Yu waved his hand and said, What do you mean by at the peak? There is no end to martial arts and no limit. We martial artists have to surpass ourselves. Hee. Wang Yu was just about to educate Li Jian when Teacher Liang, who was beside Li Jian, couldn't help but sneer. What? There is no end to martial arts and no limit. Teacher Liang had practiced martial arts for so many years, but she didn't dare to boast like that. Seeing Wang Yu acting pretentiously, Teacher Liang put on a fake smile and asked Wang Yu, Young friend, may I ask what realm your martial arts have reached? Wang Yu was a good-tempered person. He wasn't displeased with Teacher Liang's sudden interruption. Instead, he replied honestly, I just broke through to the Grandmaster realm. When Teacher Liang heard Wang Yu's words just now, she only sneered in her heart. Now that she heard it, she laughed out loud. Wang Yu was confused by Teacher Liang's laughter and looked at Li Jian in confusion. Li Jian smiled and looked at Teacher Liang. You don't have time to help me, right? I'll find someone else. This is Liang Jingyun, Teacher Liang. He's a martial arts coach I just hired. Hello, Teacher Liang. Wang Yu gave Liang Jingyun a fist salute. Seeing Wang Yu's fist salute, Liang Jingyun was displeased again. Liang Jingyun's behavior caused Wang Yu to be slightly stunned. He asked Liang Jingyun calmly, Is there something wrong? Chapter 863. In the Kung Fu community, seniority was very important. The higher the seniority, the more powerful one was. Wang Yu's fist salute just now meant that they were of the same generation. Wang Yu was the next leader of the Kung Fu world and a master who had just reached the Master Realm. There was probably no one in the world who had a higher seniority than Wang Yu. Wang Yu and Liang Jingyun were of the same generation, which showed that he was giving Liang Jingyun enough face. However, Liang Jingyun saw that Wang Yu was only in his 20s and dared to talk to him as if he were of the same generation. Wang Yu was not a narrow-minded person. He didn't take Liang Jingyun's words to heart. He just smiled and continued to talk to Li Jian. Liang Jingyun saw that Wang Yu dared to ignore him, and he became even angrier. He asked, What realm did you say you were in? I just reached the Master Realm, Wang Yu repeated patiently. He was neither servile nor overbearing. Ha ha ha, yawning toad. How arrogant of you. This time, Liang Jingyun didn't care about Li Jian's face and directly retorted to Wang Yu. The Zhongshe realm was the highest realm that most martial artists could never reach in their entire lives. Even the heads of the 4 great clans were only at the Zhongshe realm. How could a brat who was still wet behind the ears dare to say that he had broken through the Zhongshe realm? Oh! Wang Yu nodded and then asked Li Jian, Where's the gym? I'm planning to consolidate my realm. Li Jian didn't expect Wang Yu to be so good-tempered. He didn't care even if he was rebuked. Wouldn't he fail to achieve his original goal? Of course, Li Jian was too embarrassed to urge Wang Yu to compete with Liang Jingyun. He could only say to Wang Yu, "It seems that Brother Wang is in a hurry. I'll take you and sister-in-law there." Then, Li Jian led Wang Yu and Mu Zixin inside. Liang Jinyun said mercilessly, "Mr. Li, you don't have to flatter him. He's a liar." Actually, Wang Yu didn't want to bother with Liang Jinyun because he was Li Jian's guest. Therefore, when faced with Liang Jinyun's repeated provocations, Wang Yu pretended to be dumb. Now that Liang Jinyun was pointing at Wang Yu and calling him a liar, even Wang Yu couldn't help but feel a little angry. "Teacher Liang, we have no enmity between us. Why do you have to hurt me?" Wang Yu frowned. Hearing this, Liang Jinyun coldly snorted and said, "Humph humph. The reason why martial arts are declining is because of the swindlers back then. Seeing someone like you, of course I can't tolerate it. Why are you so sure that I'm a liar?" Wang Yu was furious. Wang Yu was also extremely disgusted by those who use the guise of martial arts to deceive others. Now that he was scolded as such, one could imagine how Wang Yu felt. Li Jian quickly tried to smooth things over and said, "Teacher Liang, Brother Wang has real skills." "What skills? Do you dare to exchange a few moves with me?" Liang Jinyun provoked as he stared at Wang Yu. Wang Yu shook his head and said, "People who practice martial arts are most afraid of personal fights. When I left home, the elders in my family specifically warned me." "How is it? Did you give yourself away?" Seeing that Wang Yu didn't dare to accept the challenge, Liang Jinyun smiled and glanced at Li Jian. Li Jian was also puzzled. He had seen Wang Yu's martial arts before. Now that he didn't dare to accept the challenge, could it be that he really couldn't? This was a little ridiculous, so be it. I have to go back to work. Little Li, lead the way. Wang Yu sighed and said to Li Jian. At this moment, Liang Jinyun stepped forward and blocked in front of Li Jian. He tiptoed, and his cloth shoes drew a straight line on the granite ground. Seeing this scene, not only Li Jian, but Wang Yu's eyes also lit up. Wang Yu had seen many experts who trained their legs, but it was the first time that Wang Yu had seen someone who trained their legs to this level. This Liang Jinyun was clearly skilled. No wonder he was so arrogant. The tip of Liang Jinyun's feet slid across the granite, and a 2-meter-long line was completed in one breath. He said to Wang Yu calmly, "If you don't compete with me, don't even think about crossing this line today." Wang Yu said indifferently, "Fine, you win." Wang Yu was in a hurry to consolidate his cultivation, so he didn't have the time to mess around. "If you lose, please get out now. Otherwise, even if you're Director Li's friend, I won't let a martial arts hooligan cheat in front of me." "You." Faced with Liang Jinyun's rudeness, Wang Yu was immediately infuriated. At this time, Mu Zixin pulled on Wang Yu's clothes and said, "Fight him." But Wang Yu was about to say that he didn't have time, but Mu Zixin said, "I don't like him." Wang Yu was silent for a moment, then stared at Liang Jinyun and said, "If that's the case, then, Teacher Liang, please make your move." As Wang Yu said this, he stepped on the line drawn by Liang Jinyun, indicating that he accepted Liang Jinyun's challenge. Liang Jinyun was surprised when he saw that Wang Yu dared to accept the challenge. He then narrowed his eyes and said to Wang Yu, "Young man, you have guts. This old man is a bit arrogant. I'll let you have 3 moves first." Wang Yu replied, "I'm still young, so I should be polite. Teacher Liang, please." "If that's the case, then I won't be polite." Liang Jinyun said that he would let Wang Yu make the first move, but his body was still very honest. As he said this, he already sent a kick toward Wang Yu. There were also advantages to the decline of martial arts. There were very few people who swindled and deceived people. Those who knew martial arts had very strong hands. Liang Jinyun was even more so. Thinking about it, with Li Jian's status, how could the teacher he hired be weak? Liang Jinyun's kick was just like the line he had drawn before, fierce and fierce, filled with the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. Li Jian and Mu Zixin felt the pressure from far away. Tan Tue. Wang Yu's eyes narrowed, and his left hand moved to his waist, his feet like a sheep horse, while his right hand drew an arc and chopped at Liang Jinyun's ankle. As the fist and leg collided, Wang Yu felt a huge force coming towards him. As he chopped his hand, he retreated half a meter, canceling out the force. Liang Jinyun's first kick was directly blocked. Not bad. Liang Jinyun was startled, but his feet didn't stop moving. With a turn of his body, his other leg was already above Wang Yu's head, and he smashed it down. Wang Yu switched from horse stance to Xingyi fist tiger steps. He raised his palm and blocked Liang Jinyun's attack, at the same time retreating another half a meter, canceling out Liang Jinyun's second kick. The Tan-Tue martial art had always been ferocious and ruthless. Each move was faster than the previous, and once it gained momentum, it would be relentless. Wang Yu was kicked twice in a row, and Liang Jinyun had already used all of his moves. Seeing that Wang Yu had also blocked the second kick, Liang Jinyu's body flipped in the air. His hands pressed against the ground, and his legs kicked backwards, both of his feet kicking towards Wang Yu. This time, Wang Yu didn't cancel out the force. Instead, he punched out with both fists directly at the soles of Liang Jinyun's feet. Wang Yu retreated another meter, while Liang Jinyun was pushed back 3 to 4 meters by Wang Yu. Chapter 864. Seeing this scene, Liang Jinyun's expression immediately changed from surprise to fear. Liang Jinyun could draw a line on the ground with the tip of his foot. In Wang Yu's eyes, there were only a handful of people who were skilled in martial arts. Liang Jinyun also knew his own strength, which was why he dared to be so arrogant. However, he also knew how difficult it was to erase the line on the ground with the sole of his foot. Scientifically speaking, the smaller the surface area of the foot, the greater the pressure. The smaller the surface area of the foot, the smaller the pressure. If one wanted to erase the line Liang Jinyun drew, they would have to use at least several times the force. However, as Wang Yu blocked Liang Jinyun's attack, he easily erased the line on the ground. One had to know that Liang Jinyun had to concentrate to draw the line, but Wang Yu was multitasking when he erased the line. Liang Jinyun and Wang Yu were probably the only ones who understood the difference between the two. Liang Jinyun knew that he had really met a tough opponent this time. However, Liang Jinyun was also an expert of his generation. Now that he was old, he naturally knew what it meant to fight behind closed doors. The reason why Liang Jinyun didn't hide it from outsiders was because he wanted to embarrass Wang Yu. However, he didn't expect that the young man in front of him was so strong that it exceeded his imagination. Now that the arrow had been shot, it was too late to retract it. Both sides had already started fighting, and Wang Yu had given him 3 moves. If Liang Jinyun admitted defeat now, not only would he lose his old face, but he would also lose the reputation of his family's Tan-Tue. Now that things had come to this, he could only bite the bullet and fight. At this moment, Wang Yu was also filled with shock. Logically speaking, although Liang Jinyun's strength couldn't be compared to the leaders of the 4 great clans in Old Tong, he wasn't far from them. With Wang Yu's usual skills, even if he could win, he would be in a stalemate for dozens of moves. However, Liang Jinyun kicked 3 times in a row, each stronger than the last, but Wang Yu easily blocked it. At the same time, he used Liang Jinyun's strength to erase the 2-meter line on the ground in 3 steps. In the past, Wang Yu definitely wouldn't have been able to do this. It seemed that sparring with an expert like Liang Jinyun had already started to make Wang Yu's nerves and muscles remember the realm he had just broken through. Wang Yu was pleasantly surprised by this effect. No matter how much he trained his body, it was still a dead thing. How could it compare to an expert feeding him moves? This was the same as the difference between playing a game and ranking. Playing 1,000 games would not be able to improve one's strength as much as playing a few dozen ranking matches. At this moment, Liang Jinyun was feeding moves to Wang Yu, giving Wang Yu a helping hand. However, Wang Yu was right in front of Liang Jinyun and saw that Liang Jinyun was in a daze. He knew that when Liang Jinyun saw his strength, fear appeared in his heart. In a battle between martial artists, once fear appeared in their hearts, they would lose half the battle. Now, Wang Yu was counting on Liang Jinyun to temper himself. If Liang Jinyun went easy on him at the critical moment, wouldn't that be cheating him? Thinking of this, Wang Yu smiled and said, "Old Liang, were you going easy on me with those 3 moves? Show me what you're made of." More than 90% of martial artists cared about their reputation, and Liang Jinyun was one of them. Originally, when he saw Wang Yu's martial arts, he was still a little afraid. Now that he was provoked by Wang Yu's words, the bravery and ruthlessness of a martial artist was immediately stimulated. Who cares what kind of expert he is? If I don't steam buns, I won't let a brat laugh at me, even if I'm beaten to death. Humph. Don't be so arrogant. This old man will teach you a lesson. Liang Jinyun made up his mind. He leaned forward and kicked at Wang Yu's lower body. Wang Yu swung his hand down and slapped Liang Jinyun's leg away. His other hand stabbed 2 fingers at Liang Jinyun's eyes. Liang Jinyun raised his hand and blocked Wang Yu's fingers. At the same time, he used the force of Wang Yu's slap to turn around and kick at Wang Yu's calf. Seeing Liang Jinyun's kick coming at him, Wang Yu didn't dodge. Instead, he took a step forward and bent his knee, aiming at Liang Jinyun's crotch. Liang Jinyun broke out in cold sweat and immediately retracted his leg. Damn it, Wang Yu is too vicious. He's bullying people with his height and long legs. If Liang Jinyun had moved even half a step forward, he would have lost everything. Although the audience didn't know what Wang Yu was thinking, they weren't stupid. They could tell from Wang Yu's posture and Liang Jinyun's reaction that Wang Yu was quick-witted. Kung Fu was a fighting technique that could effectively knock down the enemy. If it wasn't for the restrictions on the arena, the jiu-jitsu and wrestling techniques in the fighting ring wouldn't be able to shine. Liang Jinyun was a master of Tan Tue. His aura was turbulent and varied, and he could advance and retreat with ease. Wang Yu was a martial arts prodigy. He could learn any boxing technique the moment he learned it and master it the moment he learned it. At such a young age, he was able to gather the strengths of hundreds of different martial arts. He was worthy of his title as a genius. His punches were big and powerful, and his punches were soft and hard. His attacks and defenses were perfect. The two of them advanced and retreated as fast as lightning. Their attacks and defenses were like butterflies fluttering through flowers. Although they weren't as beautiful as the exaggerated special effects on TV, they had a sense of realism and savagery. Even if they were amateurs, they could only watch the show. The battle between the two of them had everyone's eyes glued to it. Under Liang Jinyun's barrage of attacks, Wang Yu's new realm slowly merged with his body, and he felt his opponent's every move and move. The two of them fought for a full 30 rounds. Liang Jinyun's stamina was slightly inferior, and he began to pant. At that time, Wang Yu's cultivation had also been completed. Taking advantage of Liang Jinyun's kick, Wang Yu grabbed Liang Jinyun's shirt and lightly threw him away. Wang Yu's chest also took a kick from Liang Jinyun, and he took a few steps back. At the same time, he cupped his hands towards Liang Jinyun and said, "Teacher Liang's Tan Tue is indeed powerful. I have the advantage in stamina. How about we stop here?" Wang Yu had looked for a job before, so he naturally knew the pain of being eliminated. Not to mention the fact that Liang Jinyun had helped him temper his realm. Liang Jinyun was still a true expert. He was just trying to make a living, so it wasn't right for Wang Yu to come and destroy his rice bowl. At this time, it was better to call a draw. Liang Jinyun, who had been thrown away, was dumbfounded when he heard Wang Yu's words. He originally thought that Wang Yu would humiliate him, but he didn't expect Wang Yu to take the initiative and ask for a draw. Of course, Wang Yu had good intentions, but in the eyes of the awkward Liang Jinyun, it was like charity. Humph. Are you looking down on this old man? What draw? This old man lost, and this old man will give you the position of coach. Liang Jinyun snorted coldly, glanced at Wang Yu, and strode out. At this time, Li Jian hurriedly stopped him and said, Teacher Liang, don't go. You're thinking too much. Brother Wang isn't here to apply for the coaching position." Chapter 865. Wang Yu knew that martial arts practitioners were very arrogant. He thought that he had done something wrong, so he did not go up to help. He could only silently watch as Liang Jinyun pushed Li Jian away and walked out as if there was no one else around. Looking at the bewildered Wang Yu, Li Jian said with a bitter expression, "Brother Wang, that's not very kind of you. If you want to come, then come. Why did you make my coach run away in anger, Brother Wang?" At this moment, Liang Jinyun seemed to realize something and suddenly turn around. He stared at Wang Yu and asked, Your surname is Wang? Yes. Wang Yu nodded. Who is teacher Wang Tianlong of Violent Thunder shakes the 9 provinces to you? Liang Jinyun asked again. My father, Wang Yu said calmly. Hearing Wang Yu's words, Liang Jinyun's expression became extremely ugly. So you are the peerless genius of the Wang family? My father was defeated by you 10 years ago? Senior Liang saw that I was young and thought too highly of me. Moreover, Mr. Liang is quite old and not suitable for martial arts. Is Mr. Liang doing well? Wang Yu asked embarrassedly. At that time, Wang Yu was in high spirits. He was also a newborn calf that was not afraid of tigers. He went around challenging martial arts schools. When he left his house, he first challenged the Cha Quan and Tan Tue schools that were closest to his house. Now that he thought about it, he was indeed a bastard. Liang Jinyun sighed and said, Sigh, my father passed away last year, Hearing Liang Jinyun's words, Wang Yu was shocked. Why did old master? Liang Jinyun was only in his 40s. At that time, the Liang family was located in the Linqing region of northwest Shandong. There was a tradition of early marriage. Old Master Liang was only in his early 60s. In the circle of martial arts that specialized in health, he was not considered old. It was really unexpected that he passed away so early. Our Liang family is a small business. My father practiced martial arts when he was young and left with a hidden injury. We could not afford to treat it, so, as for martial arts, I do not intend to let my son learn it anymore. Liang Jinyun's eyes were glistening with tears. Although Wang Yu came from a large family, he understood Liang Jinyun's situation. Most martial arts families were in the same situation. It was not that they did not want to pass on their skills, but with martial arts declining, it was difficult for them to make ends meet. Who could afford to practice? If they were not forced by circumstances, no martial artist would swallow their pride and become a fitness instructor for others. The reason why Liang Jinyun attacked Wang Yu was because he suspected that Wang Yu was a swindler who caused the decline of his martial arts. Teacher Liang, I know you are skilled in martial arts. You don't have to do this. Wang Yu tried to persuade Liang Jinyun. Liang Jinyun shook his head. Liang Jinyun Liang Jinyun shook his head. At the end of the day, our Liang family Tantue still lost to your Wang family style. Master Liang, that's where you're wrong. Hearing Liang Jinyun say that, Wang Yu said in a serious tone, there is no difference in martial arts, but knowledge. I think that once martial arts are divided into different sects, they will be at a disadvantage. Why do you say that? Liang Jinyun asked with a frown. The martial arts community was very prejudiced. Wang Yu's words were a little disgraceful. Which sect in the world do you think has the most perfect martial arts? Wang Yu asked. The most perfect? Liang Jinyun thought for a moment and said, no martial arts can be invincible. That's right. There is no perfect martial arts in the world. Only by mastering all martial arts can one become stronger endlessly. Liang Jinyun had always been educated by sectarian views since he was young. This was the first time he had heard such a shameful statement. What made Liang Jinyun even more surprised was that he couldn't refute Wang Yu's statement at all. Following that, Wang Yu added, I know why you don't want to teach martial arts, but for your own sake, and for the sake of martial arts, please don't leave. Liang Jinyun was very prejudiced by sectarianism. He did not want to teach martial arts, but he could not stand his family's poverty and Li Jian's tempting offer. The reason why he wanted to leave, other than being afraid of embarrassing himself in front of Wang Yu, was that he did not want to teach his family's martial arts to outsiders. Wang Yu's words directly hit Liang Jinyun where it hurt. Sectarianism led to the decline of martial arts. If he taught martial arts, even if he could not find a disciple he liked, he would have the capital to let his next generation learn martial arts. Liang Jinyun was stunned for a while before he sighed and said, I have always thought that I was extraordinary, but today I finally know that people call you a genius not just because you are from the Wang family. Seeing that Liang Jinyun was wavering, Li Jian hurriedly said, Teacher Liang, we can talk about the salary later. As for your child, he can learn here while you are here. I will take care of all the expenses. Liang Jinyun was touched. He looked at Wang Yu and Li Jian and said, there is no need to talk about the salary. As long as you can let my child learn martial arts, I will be satisfied. Brother Wang, I will take you to the gym now. Seeing that Liang Jinyun had finally decided to stay, Li Jian excitedly pulled Wang Yu and continued walking. Wang Yu waved his hand and said, "There's no need for that now." Huh? Why? Li Jian asked in confusion. Because of teacher Liang, Wang Yu said and bowed to Liang Jinyun. Then he said goodbye to Li Jian and Liang Jinyun and left Tianyuan Sports Center with Mu Zixin. On the way back, Mu Zixin suddenly said, "Hubby, you have not returned the car to Boss Lee. I left it on the counter." Wang Yu smiled. "Why didn't you give it to him personally?" Mu Zixin asked curiously. "Because he will definitely not accept it." The weather in March was bright and sunny, but the sky was filled with willow catkins, which made people feel inexplicably annoyed. Wang Yu, who had improved his realm, could not care less about these things. He dragged Mu Zixin around the streets for the whole day and only returned home at night. The next day, Wang Yu was scolded by the Chuanjin people when he entered the game. Not only the B** cheese like Wuji, but even the two ladies, Yang Na and Ling Longmeng, questioned, "Old cow, where did you and Sister Xian go yesterday? You said you would leave for a while, but you did not come back online?" In the end, Wang Yu was annoyed by the group of people and simply said, "Why are you single dogs meddling in the affairs of a couple? F***CK, B***TCH, how dare you mock us?" The Chuanjin people, who had been forced to eat dog food, once again drowned Wang Yu in their saliva. It was only when Wang Yu silently put on her gloves that the crowd's fooling around stopped. Wuji looked at Wang Yu, who was constantly changing her weapon form. He cleared his throat and said, "Everyone, be serious. Let's get down to business." Yes. We are serious people. We must talk business." Everyone looked at Wang Yu's weapon with lingering fear and hurriedly sat up straight. At that moment, there was a knock on the door at Chuanjin's office. Chapter 866. Captain Don't Shoot and Big Bear were the leaders of Finger Heaven. They had already made an agreement with the Quanjin sect to fight together today. Therefore, the Quanjin people were not surprised when they knocked on the door. On the other hand, when Don't Shoot's group suddenly came to Chuanjin's territory, they felt like sheep walking into a tiger's den. It couldn't be helped. The last time they fought, Point Sword in the Sky was really traumatized. Asking a tiger for its skin, there had to be some psychological process. Leader boss, you're quite punctual." Wuji looked at his watch. There was still half an hour until the agreed time. He was surprised by Don't Shoot's sense of time. There were always some people in the game, especially those big guild leaders, who liked to show off after setting up a time with others. Then, they would show up late to show off their status. Captain Don't Shoot, he had power in the game and money in real life. He was a typical rich kid. Wuji was a little surprised that he had such a strong sense of punctuality. It seemed like this guy wasn't without merits. Don't Shoot smiled and said, "I'm used to it. Are you guys ready?" Wuji looked at Wang Yu, who was sighing and stroking his sword, and the other members of Chuanjin. He smiled and said, "Of course, we've been waiting for a long time." It was obvious that being punctual was a basic quality for Chuanjin. "Okay, then please join the team." Don't Shoot saw that Chuanjin had something in common with him and smiled. He sent everyone an invitation to join the team. When they saw Don't Shoot's invitation, Chuanjin was stunned. Then they looked at Wuji and said in the channel, "Didn't Wuji ask for a leader this time?" Under normal circumstances, the team leader would take on an important role as a commander. No one cared much about this. After all, as long as the team leader didn't shoot at the Quanjin sect, he wouldn't let the Quanjin sect do nothing. The most important thing was that the distribution of equipment had always been in the hands of the team leader. Therefore, if the Quanjin sect wanted to help others fight the dungeon, they had to get the position of team leader. Wuji didn't reply. Instead, he said in the guild chat, "Enter." Although everyone didn't know what Wuji was up to, they all understood that Wuji had never been at a disadvantage, so they didn't hesitate and joined the group. The party leader, Don't Shoot, as expected of a god-level rich person. After everyone entered the party, they took out a scroll and tore it open. Immediately after, the scenery changed, and everyone was instantly teleported to the level 70 Scarlet Maple Forest in the east of Yuhuiqing City. Currently, a group teleportation scroll was selling for several thousand gold coins each. It was just a 20-minute journey, yet he had spent several thousand gold coins. Leader, don't shoot. Sure enough, the rich are the troublesome ones. The team had landed on a patch of white land in the middle of a maple forest. Before them was a cloud of gray smoke, and level 70 monsters roamed the area around it. Only this area was extremely quiet. Clearly, the team had deliberately chosen this location to land on. The party leader, don't shoot, also felt the burning gazes of the Quanjin players because he had casually torn scroll. He hurriedly explained, I had no choice. There are level 70 monsters all around us, and it's very troublesome to clear them out. It's better to spend some money than to waste time. Haha, Wuji laughed and praised. I admire the party leader's attitude of treating time like life. There's no time to lose. Let's enter the dungeon. Okay. Don't Shoot nodded and walked to the front of the smoke. He placed his hand in the middle of the smoke, and everyone was instantly swallowed by it. System notification. You have discovered the trial dungeon. Treasure vault. The treasure vault was a typical cave. The gray light and the occasional sound of wind created a very frightening atmosphere. After entering the dungeon, Don't Shoot pointed forward and said to Wang Yu's group, the monsters in this dungeon are very intelligent. That's not important. Before Don't Shoot could finish, Wuji interrupted. Before we start fighting, we have to clarify some things. Although you're the party leader, I will be the one to distribute the equipment. Do you understand this? Don't Shoot naturally knew what Wuji meant. He smiled and said, of course. If this dungeon wasn't the only quest dungeon, I would have thrown the party leader to you. What? The only quest dungeon? Why didn't you say so earlier? Hearing Don't Shoot say that, the expressions of Wuji and Quan Zhen's group changed. The only quest dungeon was different from the regular dungeons, hidden dungeons, and normal quest dungeons. Just like the bosses that spawn because of quests, the only quest dungeon was created because of quests. Once it was completed, it would disappear forever. At the same time, only players who had the quest could trigger it and enter the dungeon. Apart from that, the monsters and the only quest dungeons that spawned because of quests had a very deceptive characteristic. They almost never dropped anything other than quest items. At that time, Wuji had told Don't Shoot that he wanted all the drops from the dungeon except quest items. Now, wouldn't Quan Zhen's group be working for nothing? I said it before, the quest dungeon. Don't Shoot shrugged helplessly. His face was full of grievance and even a little bit of pride. T. You're changing the concept, Wuji said anxiously with a pale face. The quest dungeon and the only quest dungeon were two completely different concepts. Wuji had been killing birds all day, but today he was actually being pecked in the eye by a bird. Who were these people from Quanjun? They were a group of people who only took advantage of others and never suffered losses. How could they be willing to work for others for free? Seeing Don't Shoot's attitude, they immediately took out their weapons. They wanted to kill Don't Shoot first. Don't Shoot saw that Quan Zhen's group was anxious and quickly said, but you've already accepted the quest, and we've already paid the deposit. If you go back on your word or attack us now, you'll have to pay double the deposit. So be it. We don't care. Wuji imitated Don't Shoot's expression and shrugged. I've been rich recently, so I don't care about a few tens of thousands of gold. Why you guys are so shameless? How can you break the contract just like that? Don't Shoot originally thought that Wuji, who always took advantage of others, would helplessly help them clear the dungeon when he heard that they had to pay double the compensation. Who knew that Wuji would reject them so calmly? Don't Shoot instantly panicked. Don't Shoot was still a little inexperienced. Seeing his expression, Wuji revealed a cunning smile. We're willing to pay double the compensation. How is that shameless? Be careful, or I'll sue you for slander. Don't Shoot was speechless. In the end, he gave in and said, name your price. What do we have to do for you to help us? 100,000. I have some doubts about your character, so I have to pay first. Wuji said with a smile. You, Don't Shoot almost died from anger when he heard Wuji's conditions. This guy was rich, but he wasn't a spendthrift. 100,000 gold to clear a dungeon was much more expensive than hiring their professional players to work overtime. Chapter 867. Don't Shoot seemed to be afraid that Wuji would go back on his word. When he heard what Wuji said, he became anxious again. 100,000 is fine, but can you guarantee that you'll clear the dungeon? Wuji smiled. It's hard to say, but you know Chuanjin's character. We're paid to do things, and we won't slack off. We'll definitely do our best. Putting Chuanjin's character aside, when it came to Chuanjin's character, even Wang Yu, a member of Chuanjin, felt a little embarrassed. Wang Yu had never seen a person who wanted to extort money from their employer after entering a dungeon. Of course, if you don't believe us, we can quit now. As he spoke, Wuji gestured to the Chuanjin members. Everyone pretended to want to quit the dungeon. Okay. Whatever you say. Don't Shoot was shocked. He quickly took out a 100,000 gold contract and handed it to Wuji. Wuji took the contract and smiled. Why didn't you do this from the start? Why did you have to make things so troublesome? Don't Shoot looked depressed. If I knew this would happen, I would have been on guard against you from the start. I just beat you at your own game. I'm surprised that boss would be so calculative for such a small amount of money. Wuji laughed coldly. Don't Shoot's face turned red. He waved his hand and said, Okay, let's clear the dungeon. When the Chuanjin members saw Don't Shoot's reaction, they asked Wuji in confusion, Are you two doing some dirty deals? Why are you so sure that he'll pay? Wuji said, Because he doesn't dare to make us quit the dungeon. Why? Everyone was still confused. Wuji said, Because they've already cleared this dungeon 3 times. There were many types of quests in Rebirth, and the unique quests had a time limit. Otherwise, if a player accepted a quest and didn't do it for a month, they would have been killed hundreds of times by other players. The maximum time limit for guild quests was 1 month. This dungeon was open once a week. Finger Under the Heavens had already been cleared 3 times. This was obviously the last time. Otherwise, they wouldn't have paid such a high price to hire outside help. Hearing what Wuji said, everyone suddenly understood. Wang Yu said disdainfully, F***, you even took the money and still cheated people. You're too shameless. Humph. Wuji snorted coldly. If he didn't want to trick us, he wouldn't have been tricked by me. Indeed, if Captain Don't Shoot had made it clear from the beginning that this was the only quest dungeon and there was no profit to be made, Wuji would have negotiated other conditions with him long ago. He wouldn't have raised the price after entering the dungeon. However, in Captain Don't Shoot's mind, Chuanjin was a group of people who valued money more than their lives. Therefore, when he heard that Wuji wanted the profit from the dungeon, he wanted to make Chuanjin suffer in silence. Yu Huiqing's major guilds had almost all been cheated by Chuanjin before. If any guild could salvage the situation in front of Chuanjin, they would not only get benefits. Little did they know that although these people loved money, they were not inferior to Captain Don't Shoot when it came to spending money. It was just a few tens of thousands of gold in compensation. How could this group of hooligans be scared off? They went for wool and came home shorn. Taking people's money to eliminate disasters was Chuanjin's motto. Even if they didn't have a good impression of Captain Don't Shoot, they had to do their best after taking the money. In terms of the spirit of the contract, Chuanjin had never cheated. The first stage of the Enemy of the Hidden Treasure was called a Long Cave. It was filled with level 60 elite monsters called Treasure Hunting Vanguard and Greedy Thieves. Treasure Hunting Vanguard monsters were warrior monsters. They were strong and ferocious. They wielded their pickaxes vigorously and would cause the target to be knocked back. Greedy Thieves were invisible monsters. They appeared and disappeared mysteriously and were very disgusting. However, Captain Don't Shoot had already led people to clear the dungeon 3 times. Everyone was familiar with the dungeon. They were well prepared. As soon as they stepped into the cave area, Captain Don't Shoot fired a 700 true sight gem. The market price was 700 gold. Suddenly, a light illuminated the area around Captain Don't Shoot. With Captain Don't Shoot as the center, all greedy thieves within a 5-meter radius had nowhere to hide. There was no need to question the strength of Qiuanjin's group. The 7 or 8 players who were able to follow Captain Don't Shoot into this dungeon were also the elites of the elites. Under Wuji's command, the group quickly cleared out the monsters in the cave and killed their way to the end. As everyone expected, the drop rate of the unique quest was extremely low. Any dungeon with level 60 elite monsters would at least drop some attribute equipment after killing so many monsters. However, everyone had not even dropped a single piece of white equipment along the way. Mingdu and the others originally had a glimmer of hope. At this moment, they were filled with indignation. At the end of the cave was a circular platform. On the platform was a cover covered with runes. It was probably the entrance to the next scene. Captain Don't Shoot pointed at the cover and said, "We've cleared this place 3 times, but we haven't been able to enter." Mingji and Daoshua laughed and said, "What's so difficult about this? Isn't it just a locked door? Just open the lock and it's over." It would be great if it was that simple. Captain Don't Shoot sighed and pointed at the 2 shiny red gems on both sides of the cover. Do you see those 2 positions? These 2 gems are magic arrays that seal the cover. Once you enter the area of the cover, you'll be killed by the magic array. What's even more infuriating is that these 2 gems can't be broken. Boss Wuji, I've long heard that you're resourceful. Do you have a way to open this entrance? Captain Don't Shoot thought that Wuji would have to think for a while. However, before Wuji could say anything, Qiuanjin's group laughed and said, "This is too easy." When Captain Don't Shoot heard this, his mouth curled up into the sky. His sword pointed at the sky. The others also had faces of disbelief. The game had been open for so long, and everyone had more or less encountered the combination of traps and magic arrays. The usual method was to first destroy the magic array before opening the lock. However, these 2 gems were immune to attacks. It was simply invulnerable. It was true that the people from Qiuanjin were good at fighting, but this was a question of intelligence. It wasn't something that could be solved with brute force. What was the use of being good at fighting? Seeing that Captain Don't Shoot and Sword Point at the Sky were full of doubt, Wuji said, "Daoshua, go and show them." Mingji and Daoshua received the order and came to the side of the gems with a smile. Then, he took out a shovel used for digging traps from his bag and started digging around the base of the gems. In a short while, Mingji and Daoshua dug out the 2 large gems along with the base. After digging out the gems, Mingji and Daoshua switched the shovel in his hand to a dagger. He casually flicked it, and with a click, the lock on the cover broke. Fine, the system didn't play by the rules. The people from Qiuanjin were even more ruthless. They directly dug out the root. Chapter 868. Scarlet Blood Moon. Left rare magic tool. Essential for setting up magic arrays. Cannot be destroyed. Scarlet. Can be used with Scarlet Blood Moon. Right. To activate magic array, Scarlet Blood Sacrifice. Deals 20% of maximum HP as true damage to the target every second. Scarlet Blood Moon. Right rare magic tool. Essential for setting up magic arrays. Cannot be destroyed. Blood Sacrifice. Can be used with Scarlet Blood Moon. Left. To activate magic array, Scarlet Blood Sacrifice. After killing the target, the magic array's energy can be replenished. Magic tool. The most expensive consumable in the game. The most common magic tools were teleportation scrolls, return scrolls, and magic scrolls. Even these common magic tools were priceless. One could imagine the value of a rare magic tool like Scarlet Blood Moon. Magic arrays were high-end technology that players could not grasp. Wuji's pet, illusionary snakes, May's magic array was one of them. However, illusionary snakes, May's magic array was a support type. Its value was slightly lower than an attack type. Although this Scarlet Blood Moon was a simple purchase, the magic array's effect was not simple at all. Not only did it deal shocking damage, but it was also self-sufficient. It completely conformed to the law of energy conservation. If this was placed at the entrance of a guild encampment, it would be a lethal weapon. Looking at the magic array in Mingjian Daoshue's hand, everyone was completely dumbfounded. Even if they racked their brains, they wouldn't have thought that there was another more domineering way to break this magic array apart from destroying it. What they didn't know was that the people of the Quanjun sect had always believed in the principle of taking whatever they could and destroying whatever they couldn't. At the same time, the party leader regretted not shooting. The value of this magic array was much higher than ordinary magic tools. From a strategic point of view, it was even more priceless. Of course, the party leader didn't shoot because he was worried about the money. He regretted not thinking of this method. Such a good treasure was right in front of him, but he didn't pick it up. If he had pried it off the first 3 times, there would be a solid barrier around the 4 entrances of the guild encampment. "Are you selling this? I'll pay an RMB." The party leader asked enviously as he looked at the magic array in Famous Sword's hand. "I haven't had enough yet." Famous Sword Du Shui rolled his eyes and tossed the 2 scarlet blood moons into his bag. The party leader suddenly regretted agreeing to Chuanjin's conditions for all the dungeon's profits. "All right, we can go down now." No matter how much he regretted it, clearing the dungeon was the most important thing. Seeing that the passageway had opened, the party leader waved his hand and gave the order to continue forward. However, at this moment, a scarlet pillar of light suddenly rose from the passageway. At the same time, a terrifying roar came from below the passageway. "Despicable thief! How dare you steal my treasure?" Accompanied by a roar, a monster jumped out from the tunnel. The monster was 4 to 5 meters tall, with 2 bull horns on its head and 2 large wings on its back. Its blue face was covered in mucus, and its purple hair was crawling with maggots. Coupled with its festering red skin, it looked abnormally disgusting. Seeing the strange appearance of this monster, everyone could not help but take a few steps back. Rebirth was a very humane game, especially when it came to the design of the game's NPCs. They were all very exquisite. Even the most repulsive villains were made to look mighty and domineering. The wretched and disgusting guy in front of him was even rarer than a god-tier boss. After the monster jumped into the passageway, it kept roaring loudly. Its mouth and nostrils spewed out mucus and saliva, corroding the ground and causing smoke to form. As everyone retreated, they used a tech on it. Greedy Red Devil, LV60, Gold, Elite, HP, 3000000 MP. 50,000 skills, Claws of Greed, Eyes of Greed, Devour of Greed talents. Poison Corrosion, this kind of trash was actually a level 60 gold elite boss. This was really unexpected. "Did you steal my treasures?" Just when everyone was shocked, the greedy Red Devil also discovered the invading players. It roared and jumped out of the passageway directly towards Wang Yu's group. Seeing the boss jump over, the party leader quickly gave the order, "Formation, formation, block him." Everyone in Finger Heaven was also an elite player. After receiving the order, they quickly formed a formation. The 4 shield bearers in the front row quickly opened up a shield wall. The treasure cave was not spacious. The 4 shield bearers stood side by side, directly blocking the path. The greedy Red Devil was also blocked on the other side of the shield wall. At the same time, the long-range professions behind the shield bearers launched attacks at the greedy Red Devil. The greedy Red Devil was strong and had thick skin. It was not afraid of these attacks at all. Moreover, the poison in its body was quite fierce. Everyone's attacks did not have much effect, and they only barely blocked the greedy Red Devil. However, there were not many people in Finger Heaven, so it was only a matter of time before it ran out of strength. Sure enough, the greedy Red Devil was blocked for less than 10 seconds. Suddenly, a red light flashed in his eyes, and he pointed his sword at the sky. The 4 shield bearers in the front row directly turned into red statues, fixed on the spot. Behind the front line, the greedy Red Devil extended its claws, grabbed the shield bearer at the front called Rock Solid, and threw him whole into its mouth. F***CK. Seeing the greedy Red Devil actually swallowing someone whole, everyone's scalp went numb. Even Wang Yu broke out in a cold sweat. Not to mention how terrifying it was to be swallowed by a monster. The greedy Red Devil's rotten teeth alone made Wang Yu's stomach churn. However, this was nothing. The scariest thing was yet to come. Rock Solid, who was swallowed by the greedy Red Devil, did not die. After being swallowed, the brat was quickly excreted by the greedy Red Devil. Apart from the HP bar on his head decreasing, the shield in his hand had disappeared. Moreover, the greedy red devil's HP that had been hit by Finger Heaven and the others had instantly recovered. Firm as a monolith threw away his shield with a look of despair on his face. He threw a taunt at the greedy red devil. Seeing this, the greedy red devil very considerately fulfilled his wish. He grabbed Firm as a monolith and stuffed it into his mouth again. After being excreted for the second time, the helmet on Rock Solid's head disappeared as well. After being excreted twice in a row, no one would be in a good mood. The rock-hard spirit absent-mindedly activated charge and was about to escape when the red demon extended its claws again, grabbed the rock-hard spirit's hind leg, and stuffed it into its mouth for the third time. Looking at the greedy red devil eating and defecating, for some reason, everyone could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva at such a disgusting scene. He's aiming. Who designed this boss? Is he trying to disgust us to death? Everyone had the same thought in their minds. Chapter 869. Bosses and skills that could destroy players' equipment had always been criticized by the players. However, in front of this monster, the players had completely ignored the fact that it could devour players' equipment. Everyone's attention was now on Solid Rock. Damn, what does it feel like to be reincarnated in the boss's body? Especially since the boss's appearance wasn't very hygienic. Looking at Solid Rock's state, he was probably on the verge of a mental breakdown. Hurry up and save him. The party leader, Don't Shoot, felt bad seeing his underlings being tortured by the boss. However, everyone looked at each other and didn't dare to take a step forward. What a joke. This guy was so disgusting. No one would be able to survive if they went up. As the saying went, it didn't matter who died. Moreover, everyone had seen that 4 shield bearers couldn't even last a breath. Even if everyone went up, they wouldn't be able to handle this guy. They would just be sending themselves to their deaths. Just when everyone was hesitating to move forward, a figure flew over the crowd, made a few turns in the air, and jumped to a place not far away from them that was as firm as a rock. That tall and sturdy figure, as well as his agile movements, needless to say, there was no one else other than Wang Yu. This was the 4th time Solid Rock had been pulled out by the greedy red devil. His clothes had already been swallowed, and he didn't have much HP left. The greedy red devil turned around with familiarity and extended its claws towards Solid Rock. Wang Yu clapped his hands, and a white light rolled out, pulling Solid Rock to his side before the greedy red devil could. The greedy red devil was slightly shocked. It swept its claws horizontally and followed behind Unbreakable Rock. Wang Yu turned around and blocked in front of Unbreakable Rock. With a thunder stomp, he kicked Unbreakable Rock back to his camp. Seeing this, everyone's expression changed. This was a guy who had been pooped by the boss 4 times. Who dared to get too close to him? Only Ming Du didn't avoid it. Instead, he walked over and asked, "How is it, bro? How does it feel to be pooped?" Solid Rock pooped. At the same time that Rockhard was sent flying, the greedy red demon's claws had already reached out and grabbed Wang Yu tightly in his hands before sending her straight into his mouth. This greedy red devil clearly wasn't very familiar with eating humans. It was also possible that the people he had eaten in the past had never resisted, so he only grabbed Wang Yu's body and didn't grab her arm. Wang Yu flipped his hand, and his glove turned into a sword. He held the sword with both hands and stabbed it into the greedy red devil's Higu acupoint. Roar! The greedy red devil let out a blood-curdling screech. He involuntarily let go of Wang Yu's hand, causing Wang Yu's body to fall to the ground. However, the greedy red demon's tone was even worse than his foot. When he screamed, Wang Yu was right next to his mouth. Her body was instantly poisoned. The greedy red devil was huge and fast. Taking advantage of Wang Yu's reduced speed, it lifted its leg and stomped on Wang Yu. In the blink of an eye, the moment the greedy red devil's foot landed, Wang Yu rolled to the back of the greedy red devil's foot. He raised his sword and accurately stabbed the Kunlun acupoint behind the greedy red devil's ankle. In the blink of an eye, just as Red Devil's foot landed on the ground, Wang Yu rolled on the ground and rolled behind Red Devil's foot. She raised her sword and accurately stabbed the Kunlun acupoint on the back of Red Devil's ankle. Roar! Despicable thief! The greedy Red Devil roared in pain again. It turned around and reached out to grab Wang Yu. However, the reduced speed only decreased its movement speed, not its rolling speed. Wang Yu rolled again and once again flipped into the greedy Red Devil's blind spot. He casually stabbed the sword into the boss' ankle again. It seemed like Wang Yu was determined to break the boss's hamstring. The greedy Red Devil wanted to grab Wang Yu and eat him alive. However, its body was too big, and its turning speed was far slower than Wang Yu's rolling speed. Just like that, Wang Yu's feet kept moving. No matter how the greedy Red Devil turned, Wang Yu would accurately stab the sword into the boss' ankle before the boss could turn around. Seeing that Wang Yu had aggroed the boss, the party leader stopped firing and ordered, "The boss is pinned down, attack. F***, don't mess around." Wu Ji saw that the party leader was going to forcefully support the boss and quickly stopped him. However, the party leader was the boss of Finger the Sky. The players of Finger the Sky would not listen to Wu Ji. They all drew their bows and gathered their magic, once again attacking the greedy Red Devil. Boom, 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 boom. The arrows and magic bombarded the greedy Red Devil's body, causing damage to float up. "A bunch of retards," Wu Ji cursed. He pointed at a thick stone pillar not far away and said to the Chuanjin players, "Quickly hide behind the stone pillar." The Chuanjin players were not part of the team. After receiving Wu Ji's order, they all retreated and hid behind the stone pillar. When the party leader saw that the Chuanjin players were slacking off, he couldn't help but say in disdain, "What are you afraid of?" However, before the party leader could finish his sentence, the greedy Red Devil spread its wings and suddenly flew into the air. It sat down on Finger the Sky's formation. F***, quickly raise your shields. The party leader was shocked and hurriedly gave the order. Finger the Sky's shield warriors raised their shields hurriedly. At that time, the greedy Red Devil also descended from the sky and smashed down viciously. As the shield warriors had raised their giant shields in advance, Finger the Sky's players were not killed by the impact. However, their formation was directly disrupted. The party leader and the others hurriedly turned and ran. At the same time, the greedy Red Devil's eyes emitted a dazzling red light again. The red light spread through the cave. Everywhere it went, everyone turned into red statues. Only Chuanjin's group, who were hiding behind the stone pillar, survived. The greedy Red Devil was an elite boss. Its aggro process was different from normal bosses. The greedy Red Devil was selective. The greedy Red Devil couldn't catch Wang Yu and was running around anxiously. The party leader, "Don't shoot and let the others attack him." Wasn't this just looking for excitement? Now, they were all turned into figurines by the boss. Who knew if someone would suffer from the 5-grain reincarnation cycle? Finger the Sky's players were frozen behind. They all prayed, "Please don't eat me. Eat the one next to me." The greedy Red Devil seemed to have OCD. It looked around and extended its claws towards the pitiful Firm Rock again. Just as Firm Rock was about to become SH*T for the 5th time, Wang Yu, who had been slowed down, had already rushed over slowly. Wang Yu ran behind the greedy Red Devil, leaped up, and stepped on the back of the greedy Red Devil's head with Thunderstomp. The greedy Red Devil's head was kicked forward, and Firm Rock fell to the ground. Then, the greedy Red Devil turned around and was about to bite Wang Yu. Chapter 870. Roar! The greedy Red Devil roared and slammed its claws towards Wang Yu. At the same time, its eyes began to condense red light again. Wang Yu swung his staff and blocked the claws of the greedy Red Devil. He then flew into the air, head down and feet up. Bang! Bang! Borrowing the strength of the Red Devil's claws, Wang Yu instantly flew in front of the greedy Red Devil. He kicked out with both legs, hitting the Red Devil's eyeballs. -2 3 3 3 3 -42544. As long as it was an animal, the eyes were a weak point. Not only did Wang Yu's 2 kicks deal critical damage, they also forcefully interrupted the Red Devil's skill. Without waiting for the Red Devil to counterattack again, Wang Yu swung his left hand, and the flying dragon cable flew out wrapping around the red devil's neck. Wang Yu grabbed the other end of the flying dragon cable and jumped, swinging behind the red devil. Both of his legs suddenly descended with Thunder Stomp, kicking the red devil's calf. Thunder Stomp was Wang Yu's ultimate skill. Even the clone of an ultimate boss, like an apostle, couldn't handle it, let alone a level 60 gold boss. The red devil's hind legs softened from Wang Yu's kick, and it knelt on the ground on one knee. Wang Yu took this opportunity to land on the ground and rolled a few times. He pulled the flying dragon cable back and forth between the red devil's legs, tying the red devil's legs into a dead knot that he was best at. Although the red devil was an elite boss, its intelligence was not comparable to an intelligent boss. After being kicked a few times by Wang Yu, the red devil's aggro returned to Wang Yu. It got up and was about to attack Wang Yu, but before it could stand up, its head tilted to the side and it fell to the ground. Wang Yu was really sinister. She was afraid that the greedy red demon wouldn't die, so she actually tied his legs and neck together. What the heck? How could a boss not die? Just as the red devil was tripped, Wang Yu flew to the back of the red devil's head and rode on its neck. She pressed down on the red devil's head with one hand and raised her sandbag-sized fist with the other and smashed it on the red devil's head with a clang-clang. The red devil naturally didn't want to be beaten for nothing. It struggled to get up, but its legs and neck were tied together. Wang Yu's fists were tight, so it couldn't break free at all. Party leader, don't shoot, and the others were pinned a few meters behind Wang Yu. Seeing Wang Yu's ferocious appearance at such a close distance scared the hell out of them. Originally, Big Bear and the others thought that Yu Huicheng and the other big guilds were suppressed by a small group like Xuanjin. Now, they completely understood that it wasn't wrong to be suppressed by such a person. After all, even a boss like the Red Devil wasn't treated differently in front of Wang Yu. Wang Yu's punches were like a storm. After about 60 or 70 punches, the Red Devil's HP finally dropped to 70%. After all, the flying dragon lasso was just an object. It couldn't even be considered a weapon. How could it withstand the gold boss's struggle? Finally, with a snap, it was torn into dozens of pieces by the Red Devil. Wang Yu was also sent flying by the impact. At that time, party leader Don't Shoot and the others' crowd control effects had been removed. Without saying anything, they all ran to the side of Xuanjin. After experiencing a crisis where they almost turned into shit, party leader Don't Shoot and the others were quite frightened. This was especially true for Firm Rock, who was covered in cold sweat. Boss Wuji, I'm really sorry. Party leader Don't Shoot quietly walked behind Wuji and said apologetically. Wuji laughed coldly. Who asked you to blindly give orders? If it wasn't for our old cow, you would have turned into shit by now. Yes. Party leader Don't Shoot nodded. Now, everyone listen my orders. Who else has any objections? Wuji looked around. As long as it's Boss Wuji's orders, we'll do it. Party leader Don't Shoot hurriedly said. Yes. We'll follow your orders. This time, the players at Finger Heaven didn't ignore Wuji anymore. They all expressed their determination to follow his orders. Wuji heard this and laughed. All right then, everyone attack the boss. Hearing Wuji say this, the expressions of the players at Finger Heaven turned ugly. Party leader Don't Shoot said pitifully, Boss Wuji, we already know our mistakes. Please don't play with us. Wuji rolled his eyes at party leader Don't Shoot and said, I don't play with men. Didn't you say that you'll listen to me? You're not going to listen anymore? But no buts. If you don't listen to my orders, just pretend that I didn't say anything. Old Cow can also abandon the boss and leave at any time. Wuji stared at party leader Don't Shoot. His eyes burned with an unquestionable tone. After hearing Wuji say this, party leader Don't Shoot had no more words. Right now, the boss was being tanked by Wang Yu alone. If Wuji wasn't happy and Xuanjin's people didn't do it, then this dungeon would definitely be wiped. This was related to the rise and fall of the guild. Was it more important to die or offend Wuji? This was a very simple choice. Okay. We'll listen to you. Party leader Don't Shoot sighed and said to the ranged professions, attack. Since their boss had already given the order, the players at Finger Heaven had no reason to disobey. After all, party leader Don't Shoot was not only the guild leader, but also the boss. They had real money in their hands. Let alone becoming shit in the virtual game, they would even eat shit. Following party leader Don't Shoot's order, everyone's attacks were thrown at the greedy Red Devil. At this moment, the greedy Red Devil and Wang Yu were fighting back and forth. Of course, the greedy Red Devil was being attacked by Wang Yu. However, without the control effect of the flying dragon cable, Wang Yu's damage wasn't as good as before. However, the greedy Red Devil wasn't able to hit Wang Yu, so it was even more unhappy. When Finger Heaven's attacks arrived, the greedy Red Devil's aggro was pulled away again. It spread its wings and flew up. The greedy Red Devil threw down Wang Yu and flew high up. Then, it descended from the sky and sat down on everyone. The moment the greedy Red Devil sat down, Wuji snapped his fingers and said, "Retreat." Everyone immediately scattered like birds and beasts. The greedy Red Devil sat down on a stone pillar. They didn't know what kind of cave this hidden treasure was for there to be something as terrifying as stalactites in it. As the saying goes, having thorns in the sky is boundless happiness. Just like that, the greedy Red Fiend felt great. -5014447 The health bar on the greedy Red Devil's head dropped by a large amount. Seeing this scene, everyone's buttholes tightened and beads of sweat dripped down like a thunderclap. In the end, the boss was also a victim. He was sent to this place where even birds wouldn't shit. Not only did he not get his treasure back after it was stolen, he was first grabbed by the head by Wang Yu and beaten up. Then he was shot in the back. This was all because he looked disgusting and like a bad guy. What kind of logic was this? Chapter 871. At the same time, Sword pointing towards the heavens also understood why Quan Jin's sect was able to suppress a big guild like Blood Alliance. Wang Yu, who could press down on the boss's head and beat it up, was enough to make people feel helpless. Now, there was also Wuji, who was cunning and vicious, and a group of experts who didn't play by the rules. Anyone would stay far away from such a small group. Greedy Red Devil was hit in the back by the stone pillar. It roared in pain and struggled to get up. Wuji had worked so hard to trap it. How could he let Greedy Red Devil escape so easily? Wuji raised his chin at Greedy Red Devil and snapped his fingers again. Block it! Spring Soaring waved his staff, and a dark boundary rose up. Ian the second followed closely behind, using his shield to block the Greedy Red Devil in a corner. At this time, Wang Yu also rushed over and started punching and kicking Greedy Red Devil. When Xuanjin and Finger Sword saw this, they knew that Greedy Red Devil wouldn't be able to escape this time. They all helped to deal damage, and Greedy Red Devil's HP dropped. During this time, Greedy Red Devil also tried to let go of Eye of Greed a few times. However, with Wang Yu around, things didn't go as he wished. Seeing that Greedy Red Devil was about to use a skill, he immediately took out a knife and stabbed Greedy Red Devil's eyes. This caused Greedy Red Devil to be traumatized, so it covered its head and let everyone attack it. Greedy Red Devil was only a level 60 boss. No matter how high its HP was, it couldn't handle the damage from a group of experts. After a few minutes, Greedy Red Devil cried out, and its HP bar emptied. The party leader let out a long sigh of relief. Such a disgusting boss wasn't invulnerable as long as they found the right way. It was just that its skills were too disgusting. If it wasn't for Xuanjin's help and the party leader not shooting, they probably wouldn't have been able to clear it if they didn't get wiped 8 or 10 times. Come to think of it, Wang Yu at most tie her up, but Wuji would really destroy her. How many normal people could be as insidious as Wuji? After the boss died, the first thing the boss did was loot its equipment. However, this had nothing to do with the players from Finger Heavenly Sword. This was because all the monsters in the instance dungeon had been taken over by Xuanjin. Of course, Finger Heavenly Sword and the others didn't think that the greedy red demon would give them anything fun. After all, this was the only quest dungeon, and the boss was famous for being stingy. Xuanjin's men looked at each other, but no one stepped forward. It couldn't be helped. The appearance of the greedy red demon was indeed not very good. In the past, everyone wanted to beat up the boss, but now they were actually pushing the blame onto each other. It would be fine if such a filthy thing could touch something good. But the problem was that it knew that it wouldn't give anything good, and it still wanted to touch a hand full of sh*t. Whoever one would become a laughingstock. Old Li, you go. In the end, Wuji chose Mingdu. Mingdu's character wasn't very good, but his luck had always been the best in Qiuanjin. Wuji let him touch it just for luck. Otherwise, opening the door and not touching anything would be unlucky. Who knew that Mingdu would immediately lie down on the ground? I suddenly don't feel well. Don't call me. F***, how shameless. Everyone looked at him with disdain. Why don't you guys go and touch it? Wuji glanced at everyone. Everyone said, Old Li, do you have medicine? I don't feel well either. Wuji was speechless. Seeing that no one wanted to touch it, in the end, it was the honest Wang Yu who volunteered. I'll touch it. As Qiuanjin's top model worker, Wang Yu even dared to hug the boss' neck. Touching it was acceptable. Okay, you can touch it. Wuji was helpless. This boss was useless. If they touched it, it might not drop anything good. If they didn't touch it, it would be a waste. Since someone was willing to touch it, they couldn't care less about luck. After getting everyone's approval, Wang Yu walked up and touched Greedy Red Demon's crotch. Greedy Red Demon was tall. Wang Yu, who was 186 meters tall, could only reach Greedy Red Demon's crotch. Other than wearing a pair of shorts, his body was covered in abscesses. He could only touch his crotch. As for why Greedy Red Demon didn't lie on the ground after it died, don't ask me anymore. Seeing Wang Yu's sorry state, everyone couldn't help but be happy. Originally, everyone just wanted to see Wang Yu make a fool of himself. Who knew that after Wang Yu touched it, he would pull out a shield. Greedy Ghost Face Shield, Gold, Physical Defense, 150-220 Magic Defense, 130-200 Attack, 40-60 plus 27 Vitality plus 33 Strength. Ghost Face, Passive Skill, 10% chance of causing fear to the target. Firm, Passive Skill, increases defense by 60%. Activates when a user's HP reaches 50%. Greedy, Passive Skill, 30% chance of stealing the target's attack and converting it into block value. Class requirement, Paladin, Shield Warrior level requirement. 40 item introduction, a normal ghost face shield that was digested by Greedy Red Demon. This is my shield. Seeing the shield in Wang Yu's hand, Firm Rock couldn't help but cry out. Oh, is that so? Wang Yu was slightly surprised. Firm Rock did have a shield swallowed by the boss. Thinking of this, Wang Yu raised his hand and was about to throw the shield over when Wuji suddenly stopped him. Old cow, don't panic. Then, Wuji stared at Firm Rock and said, How can you say that this is your shield? This ghost face shield is clearly mine. Firm Rock felt wronged. He had turned into sh*t 4 times in a row. From his weapon to his clothes, everything had been swallowed by the boss. Everyone saw this, so how could the shield not be his? Wuji laughed. Your ghost face shield is a silver equipment, right? This is Greedy's ghost face shield, which is a gold equipment. Ghost face shield was a standard silver equipment. It was quite common on the market because shields had always been a rare item. Swordpoint at the Heavens wasn't a big guild like Blood Alliance, so it was normal for elite players to have silver shields. Even though Firm Rock's original ghost face shield had better stats than the ones on the market, the 2 skills of the ghost face shield were not good enough. The most important attribute for a shield warrior was their block value. The Greedy Ghost Face shield in Wang Yu's hand was able to convert all incoming attacks into block value. Just this attribute alone was enough to turn this equipment from rotten to magical, turning it into a piece of gold-grade equipment. One was silver and one was gold. If they were given a Firm Rock just like that, wouldn't that be too much of a waste? Chapter 872. There was no need to doubt the character of Qiuanjin. Even if they were being unreasonable, they would still argue. Moreover, if they were being reasonable, it would be strange if they gave Firm Rock a shield. Although Wang Yu was honest, he wasn't the son of a landlord. Since Wuji had already spoken, Wang Yu obviously wouldn't insist on paying the bill. Wang Yu smiled at Firm Rock and put away his shield. Seeing Wang Yu put away his shield, Firm Rock said with a disappointed expression. I don't have a weapon now. It's okay, we have one. We can rent it to you. Wuji grinned. Everyone, renting equipment was a common occurrence in the game. The game also had a renting contract. After all, good equipment was in the hands of a few people. Renting equipment allowed the owner to earn money, allowed the players without the equipment to experience the equipment, and allowed the system to earn a processing fee. In short, it was multiple things at once, maximizing the value of the equipment. But they were all in the same team. Not to mention, this equipment was originally related to Firm Rock. Even if it wasn't related, it was reasonable for a teammate to borrow their equipment. But Wuji just wanted to rent it. Captain Don't Shoot didn't know why Wuji was so familiar with this idea. However, Captain Don't Shoot had a lot of feelings in his heart. Look at how shameless Wuji was. Look at his method. It was hard for Chuanjin to be weak. We're all on the same team, so don't say that I'm not giving you face. We can discuss the rent. How about 10 gold? Wuji smiled at Captain Don't Shoot. Currently, a piece of silver equipment was only around 40 to 50 gold on the market. Renting it for 10 gold? Wuji's ability to take advantage of the situation was unparalleled. Who was Captain Don't Shoot? He was a super rich person. A mere 10 gold was just disgusting. Even if the rent was extremely expensive, Captain Don't Shoot still generously agreed to rent it. After signing the contract and renting the shield, Wang Yu continued to loot the corpse. This time it was a breastplate, greedy rock heavy armor, clothing, dark gold, physical defense, 200-240 magic resist, 160-220 physique, plus 33 plus 40 strength heavy armor. Passive skill increases physical and magic defense by 20%. Colossus, passive skill. When player's HP falls to 50%, Colossus form will be activated. Player's body size increases by 50%, defense increases by 70%, attack decreases by 70%, and movement speed decreases by 50%. Mischievous Rock, active skill, becomes immune to all magic damage for 10 seconds. Greed, passive skill, absorbs damage and converts it into defense. Every stack of Greed increases defense by 10%. Maximum of 10 stacks. Skill effect disappears after exit. Required class. Paladin, Shield Warrior level requirement. 45 item introduction. An equipment digested by the greedy Red Devil. It was yet another piece of equipment that had been digested by the greedy Red Demon. Wuji was overjoyed when he saw this piece of equipment. He turned to look at Rock Solid. At this moment, the expression on Rock Solid's face was indescribable. Unsurprisingly, this piece of equipment was still an evolved version of Rock Solid. This mischievous rock-heavy armor was originally a decent piece of gold-grade equipment. Now that it had been upgraded, it had gained an additional stack of Greed, making its attributes even better. The rental price would probably increase as well. Although he was happy that his own equipment had leveled up, it was no longer his own equipment. Only Rock Solid could understand how frustrating that feeling was. He had no choice. He already had an agreement. Whether it was the party leader, Don't Shoot, or Rock Solid, he could only suffer in silence. 100 gold. Wuji gestured to the party leader, Don't Shoot. Deal. The party leader, Don't Shoot, sighed helplessly. Wang Yu took the rental contract and muttered, Do I have to loot another set of equipment? As it turned out, Wang Yu's guess was right. The next two pieces of equipment were the life helmet of Greed and the heroic leggings of Greed. These two pieces of equipment were equipment that Rock Solid had been digested by the boss. Although they did not have set attributes, the 4 Greed attributes added together were not any weaker than a set. When the party leader, Don't Shoot, saw that all 4 pieces of equipment had leveled up, he made up his mind and said to Wuji, Name a price. Wuji already knew that the party leader, Don't Shoot, would buy them, so he quoted without thinking, 10,000, no bargaining. Wuji's price surprised the party leader, Don't Shoot. He had originally thought that he would be ripped off by Wuji, but he did not expect Wuji to only offer 10,000 gold. Spending 10,000 gold on 1 piece of dark gold-grade equipment and 3 pieces of gold-grade equipment was definitely worth it. Even if these pieces of equipment were originally as solid as a rock, The cost of upgrading them to NPCs wouldn't be any less than this. The party leader Don't Shoot was obviously not someone who lacked money. He casually bought the contract of the equipment. The party leader's generosity of spending 10,000 gold made everyone sigh. It was good to be rich. While the Chuanjin players were in awe, Wang Yu wondered in the channel, why is it so cheap? This is not your style. Wu Ji laughed, casting a long line to catch a big fish. We have to do good deeds once in a while, right? When the Chuanjin players heard this, they all looked at the party leader Don't Shoot sympathetically. Uncle Neo was very supportive of doing good deeds, but they were all ordinary people. They could not save the universe or protect the Earth. All they could do was subscribe to the official version and occasionally give some tips. There was still one last chance for him to take advantage of the boss. After handing the contract to the party leader Don't Shoot, Wang Yu extended his hand and looted it. The 4 pieces of rock-solid equipment had all been looted, but no one was sure what the 5th piece was. Wang Yu rummaged around the boss's corpse and pulled out something that looked like a vest. Dead man, inner armor, special, physical defense, 10-10 magic resistance, 20-20 plus 20 agility plus 20 strength. Dead man. After the player is killed, he will have a brief moment of recovery. However, during this moment of recovery, his HP will decrease rapidly. During this period, the player can move and attack. He has 100% lifesteal. His attacks are extremely fast, and each attack will reduce the target's maximum HP by an additional 10%. All the player's skills will be replaced with Death Impulse, providing him with an explosive movement speed bonus. Class requirement, general level requirement. 1. Item introduction. The words of the Red Devil of Greed's wife come true. This is the legendary inner armor. Seeing the equipment in Wang Yu's hand, everyone's jaws dropped. What's that? Wang Yu looked at the vest in his hand in confusion and asked. Guru Iron Ox doesn't know about inner armor. The party leader Don't Shoot asked in surprise. Wu Ji's face was full of disdain. He's just a rookie, what does he know? P.S. Recommend a book, Castellan Training Log. Chapter 873. Newbie Egg. After hearing Wu Ji's words, Captain Don't Shoot was even more dumbfounded. Such a fearsome guy. And you say he's a new recruit? Chuanjin's words were really irresponsible. At the same time, Chun Xiang had already explained to Wang Yu. Inner armor was a type of armor similar to fashion. It did not take up an equipment slot, but it had some strange attributes. The only difference was that fashion was worn on the outside, making it look very gorgeous. Inner armor, on the other hand, was used to prevent players from running around naked if they lost their equipment. Most of the clothes looked good, and there were very few with attributes. Inner armor didn't have any aesthetic value, so the chances of having attributes were more or less higher than the clothes. Clothing could be bought in the merchant shop, but inner armor could only be obtained through drops. Of course, the drop rate of inner armor was also pitifully low. Apart from the extremely high drop rate during the closed beta, no one had seen such an item since the open beta. To be able to drop an inner armor in a unique quest dungeon, his luck was simply heaven-defying. At this stage of the game, the inner armor's attribute bonuses were practically negligible. However, its passive skills were frighteningly powerful. Nobody could endure such a thing. This equipment, you guys might as well roll for it. Wang Yu looked at the people from Chuanjin sect and said, the inner armor's passive ability was suitable for melee attacks. Chuanjin's range professions occupied half of the team, so it would be a waste to take it. Yin Lao Air and Bao San were both short-legged and didn't die easily, so the equipment was useless to them. North Sea Fish and Mingkan Du Shui could run fast and die easily, but an assassin's ATK was all based on their weapons and skills. Without their weapons and skills, an assassin was a moving target. Of course, this wasn't to say that this piece of equipment was useless. Having another piece of equipment was always a good thing. However, with so many people here, it would be the same no matter who it was, so it was better to just roll. However, Wu Ji said, what's there to roll for? Aren't you quite suitable? Grandmasters of combat could run fast, and were melee fighters. They did not need to consume skills like assassins, and they also died easily. Basically, they fit the criteria perfectly. Wang Yu smiled. I won't die so easily. Everyone, too arrogant. A brutal grandmaster of combat actually dared to say such words. This was practically challenging the system's settings. However, Wang Yu would not die so easily. To place one's pride, seeing that Wang Yu did not want it, hurriedly raised his hand. Since Uncle Nyo doesn't want it, then give it to me. To place one's pride used to be an expert of his generation. In Xuanzhen, he could only pick up Wang Yu's scraps. He was really miserable. Wang Yu's heart ached for this child the most. Seeing that to place one's pride wanted it, he threw the inner armor to him without hesitation. The harmony within the Xuanzhen police shocked Captain Don't Shoot and the others. Once a person's character was formed, it was very difficult to change it due to the environment. For a group as shameless and wretched as Xuanzhen, they should be fighting and scheming against each other on a daily basis. Who would have thought that they would be so harmonious when it came to the distribution of benefits? Pointing sword in the heavens, and the others could not help but feel ashamed of their inferiority. Let's go down. After looting the corpses, Wang Yu walked to the side of the tunnel and looked down. After confirming that there were no abnormalities, Wang Yu called out to everyone and jumped down first. The others followed closely behind, jumping down one by one. After passing through the tunnel, the group finally arrived at the second scene of the treasure trove. As soon as they entered this scene, everyone was stunned. The first scene of the treasure trove was a tattered cave. Underneath the cave was actually an incomparably large stone room. There were magic lamps hanging on the walls of the stone room. Tall and burly humanoid monsters were busy digging with pickaxes. Behind every 3 tall miners was a thin guy who was directing them to work. Treasure Hunter, LV60, Elite, HP, 200000 MP, 5,000 skills, deadly pickaxe strike, brutal charge talent. Digging description, a greedy treasure hunter with shocking divine power. Treasure Hunter, LV60, Elite, HP, 150000 MP, 200000 skills. Heal, steel body talent. Guidance description, a greedy treasure hunter who is proficient in many spells. What should we do? Don't Shoot looked at the monster introduction and asked Wuji with a headache. These 2 types of monsters weren't hard to deal with individually. One of them didn't have many skills and would die after exhausting them. The other one was a mage, so an assassin could deal with it. However, with these 2 types of monsters standing together, it was hard to deal with. They could attack, defend, and heal. This kind of combination was what players hated the most. Moreover, these monsters were standing in the same position as the monsters in many high-level dungeons. They were all chain mines. Pulling one part would cause the whole group to move. It was impossible to lure them away. What's more, everyone was currently in the middle of the room. It was no exaggeration to say that they had fallen into the encirclement of these monsters. Now that they were surrounded by enemies from the front and rear, the usual offensive and defensive formations that players usually used were of no use. Wuji looked around and said, "Everyone can stand in a circular formation." Circular formation? Big Bear said from the side, "We only have 5 shield warriors. We'll stand in a circular formation." As the name suggested, a circular formation was a strategy where the frontliners stood in a circle to surround the backliners. Generally, it could only be used when there were enough frontliners. Right now, there were a total of 20 people. Without 8 or 10 shield warriors, how could they surround them? Wuji ignored Big Bear's question and circled around everyone. At the same time, he used his staff to point at 5 spots on the ground and said, "Shield warriors, stand here." Hearing this, Yin Lao Air walked to one of the spots. The other 4 shield warriors looked at each other and followed suit, standing in the spots Wuji pointed at. The 5 shield warriors formed a 5-pointed star formation. Brother Chun, after the 5 shield warriors stood in place, Wuji shouted at Chun Xiang. Chun Xiang waved his staff and summoned 5 demons. They stood in between the shield warriors, blocking all the gaps and surrounding the group. "How did your imp summon become like this?" Don't Shoot asked in surprise when he saw Chun Xiang summon the demons. Don't Shoot and Chun Xiang knew each other during the closed beta. Both of them were warlocks. Chun Xiang, who had imp summon, was naturally Don't Shoot's main target. However, Don't Shoot had seen Chun Xiang's imp before. Its attributes were not bad, but it looked no different from goblins and goblins. It was green and ugly, completely different from these mighty and majestic demons. Chun Xiang smiled and said, "It's mutated. It's now imp summon." Hiss! Captain Don't Shoot sucked in a breath of cold air when he heard this. As a warlock himself, Captain Don't Shoot knew very well what kind of skill imp summon was. Such a powerful skill had actually mutated. What kind of godly skill was this? Chapter 874. Me? The Captain Don't Shoot was shocked when he heard that. He said with fear on his face, "What do you want?" Team leader Don't Shoot. You know that Xuanjin and these guys are not afraid to do anything. Moreover, they will definitely seek revenge for the smallest grievance. You have to know that Xuanjin and Finger the Heavens don't have a good relationship. At this moment, it is not impossible for a warlock like you to pull aggro. Just stand still. You'll know what you need to do later. As Wuji spoke, he nodded towards Exquisite Dream and Yang Na. The two of them raised their crossbows and shot at the head of one of the treasure hunters. These treasure hunters were in groups of 4, and the distance between their aggro was very close. Yang Na's group shot an arrow, and the treasure hunter's aggro was immediately pulled over. Following that, all the surrounding monsters also revealed an exclamation mark that triggered aggro above their heads. Once the aggro of the treasure hunters behind the treasure digger was triggered, they casually cast a layer of steel on their subordinates. After being buffed, the already muscular treasure hunter's body glowed with a faint black metallic glow, giving off an invincible oppressive feeling. Seeing the archers start the fight just like that, the party leader, Don't Shoot, and Sword Point at the Heavens panicked. F***CK. Why did he start the fight in one go? Aren't we going to split them up and kill them? In the game Rebirth, the dungeon's level would increase as the player's level increased. For dungeons that were cleared by players above level 30, it was not uncommon to see the aggro distribution of monsters in the dungeon. Moreover, as the player's level increased, this distribution became more and more common. In the beginning, players could still rely on their ferocious one-wave rush to deal with such a distribution of aggro. However, as players' levels increased and the monsters grew stronger, a brainless attack like one-wave rush would become increasingly useless. Even top-tier experts would suffer multiple team wipes if they tried to raid a dungeon with a higher level than them. Fortunately, the wisdom of the players was limitless. In order to deal with this terrifying aggro distribution pattern, they developed a method called split kill. Let the assassins pull the monsters, then split into several groups to disperse the aggro distribution of monsters. Once they regrouped, they would go into stealth and escape from the battle. This way, the players could divide the monsters and devour them. However, Wuji didn't do so. Instead, he had his archers activate one-wave rush. Damn it, these were nearly 100 level 60 elite monsters with both offensive and defensive capabilities. Moreover, they were surrounding them. Wasn't activating one-wave rush the same as committing suicide? When Wuji saw Captain Don't Shoot and the others panicking, he chuckled and said, "What are you panicking for? Range classes, just stand still and deal as much damage as you can." As soon as Wuji's words fell, Mingdu's magic and Yang Na's arrows were thrown into the group of monsters. Although Finger Sky's members were confused, they still scratched their heads and followed Mingdu and the others to attack the monsters surrounding them. These monsters did not move very fast, but after being buffed, their defense was especially high. Everyone was already doing their best to deal damage, but they only managed to kill a few monsters. These monsters bore the brunt of everyone's fire and slowly closed in. The encirclement of the monsters was getting smaller and smaller. Damn, they're surrounding us. Seeing the monsters getting closer, Captain Don't Shoot panicked again. Actually, Captain Don't Shoot was not afraid of dying once or twice. However, this dungeon had a limit. After 3 deaths, the dungeon challenge would be declared a failure. After all, this was only the second dungeon, and they had already been wiped once. Moreover, the later dungeons were getting more and more difficult. This was Finger Sky's only chance. If they fail this time, then the money spent would be wasted. Captain Don't Shoot was not stupid. Spending so many gold coins for nothing would make his heart ache. Wuji laughed. This is nothing. Wait for them to take a few more steps forward. Also, you're not allowed to attack. Save your mana. Captain Don't Shoot didn't know what Wuji was going to do. In the end, he thought about it and put down his staff. 10 seconds later, at the cost of losing 3 monsters, the encirclement was pushed to 7 or 8 meters away from Wang Yu's group. Captain Don't Shoot shouted again, "Boss Wuji, I've already paid. You're going too far." Wuji raised his hand to look at the distance and said calmly, "Wait for them to take 2 steps forward." 5 seconds later, the encirclement of the monsters was less than 4 meters away from them. The expressions on their faces could be seen clearly. Just as Captain Don't Shoot was about to shout again, Chun Xiang made his move. Chun Xiang did not use any earth-shattering skills. Instead, he casually waved his hand, and a dark barrier rose into the sky. Chun Xiang's dark barrier did not surround the monsters. Instead, it surrounded Chuanjin and Finger Sky's group. The monsters that were charging forward with their pickaxes were blocked by the barrier, as if they had hit a wall. The Warlock's dark barrier was a powerful crowd control skill. It could even control beast-type bosses for 1 or 2 seconds, let alone these small monsters. Seeing that the monsters were blocked, the party leader, Don't Shoot, and the others were so shocked that they couldn't close their mouths. Captain Don't Shoot, no matter how stupid they were, they knew what Wuji was thinking. There were close to 100 monsters in the stone room. The Warlock's dark barrier was only a circle with a diameter of 5 meters. If the dark barrier was used to trap these monsters, it would not be able to trap all of them. However, a circle with a diameter of 5 meters was enough to trap 20 players. At this moment, the dark barrier was like a barrier safely separating the players from the monsters. Although these monsters had high defense, they did not have any long-range attacks. If this continued, they could only take a beating without being able to fight back. Of course, Wuji's tactics were not too profound. Under normal circumstances, Captain Don't Shoot would have probably thought of it. However, Captain Don't Shoot was a normal person. When faced with such a situation, the first thing that came to his mind was that they could not retreat in one go. Naturally, he would not think about that. Now, the monsters and the players were only separated by a wall. The distance was very close. It could be considered close combat. However, the difference was that the players could move freely, while the monsters in the front row were stunned by the dark barrier. This gave the melee players a chance to attack. Captain Don't Shoot and Chun Xiang took turns maintaining the dark barrier's cooldown. The others first attacked the 20 treasure hunter guides that healed and increased defense. Then, they used their fists and arrows to deal with the 60 treasure hunter diggers that were stuck to the wall and could not fight back. From the time Yang, Na used her crossbow to lure the monsters to the end of the battle. Less than 10 minutes had passed. All of the monsters in the stone room had died under everyone's feet. In such a short period of time, they had killed close to 100 elite monsters that were 15 levels higher than them. This battle's efficiency and speed were simply incredible. After all, if they had used the normal method of killing the monsters, it would have taken them at least 30 minutes to kill these monsters. The efficiency of the two methods could not be compared. Chapter 875. Looking at the corpses on the ground, Finger the Heavenly's group felt like they were dreaming. They stared at Wuji as if they were looking at a monster. Even though Wuji's tactics were not advanced, he still dared to use one-wave rush in such a situation. Not only did he succeed, but he also greatly increased the efficiency. His courage and adaptability were not something an ordinary person possessed. Even if it was a commander with 50 people, they would not dare to use one-wave rush, let alone 20 people. The more capable a person was, the more arrogant they would be. Finger the Heavenly's players were the elites of the elites. They were not easily convinced. Even if they obeyed the leader's order not to shoot, it was only because of the money. Therefore, these people were very unhappy with Wuji's sudden appearance as a commander. The first few times, Wuji relied on the leader's order not to shoot to command these people. However, after this wave of battle, everyone's opinion of Wuji changed completely. From the previous indifference, they were completely convinced, especially when a ruthless person like Wang Yu, who could wipe them all out, was willing to let Wuji be the boss of Chuanjin. These people did not feel uncomfortable at all. The monsters in the stone room were wiped out. The group cleaned up the battlefield and rested for a while. Just as they were about to find the entrance to the next scene, the whole stone room suddenly shook. Rocks and other things fell. At the same time, the wall opposite them began to shake. Then, the wall collapsed, revealing a huge black stone door. On both sides of the stone door stood a tall human statue. The statues were black. One of them was holding a box, and the other was holding a huge sword. It looked very strange. Be it in ancient times or modern times, it was common to have two lions guarding the door. Only temples and Taoist temples would have two statues guarding the door. Thinking of this, everyone quickly looked up at the stone door. There was a sign hanging above the stone door. From right to left, the words Wufang Temple were written. It really is a temple. Seeing the sign above the door, Wuji could not help but complain. Rebirth was a Western fantasy game. Even if there were some Eastern elements, it would only be a small Easter egg. Now that a Western fantasy game had suddenly popped up, it was quite strange. How do we enter this door? While everyone was in a daze, the disorganized and undisciplined Wang Yu had already run to the door. He pushed the stone door twice, but the door didn't budge. "Old cow, don't be so shameless." Seeing Wang Yu touching around again, Wuji and the others broke out in a cold sweat. This elder Neo had never seen much of the world. Everything he saw was fresh and new. In real life, he was a bit more reserved, but in the game, he was fearless of Wuji. This was an instance dungeon. How could he just randomly touch the door? Ordinary people didn't have the extraordinary skills that Wang Yu had. If he were to find a trap, wouldn't he be able to kill everyone? It wasn't like he hadn't done this before. However, no matter how fast Wuji and the others spoke, they couldn't catch up to Wang Yu's eyes. At this moment, Wang Yu glanced at a small stone on the right side of the stone door. "What's this?" Wang Yu mumbled and walked near the wrench. He saw a few small words written on the stone. "Don't." The words below were stuck in the wall. Wang Yu reached out curiously and pulled the stone out of the wall. He saw the words written below the stone. "Pull out." "Don't pull out," Wang Yu muttered. At the same time, there was a creaking sound. Rows of black holes appeared on the walls on the left, right, and back of the stone room. "Quickly lie down." Seeing the holes in the wall, Wuji and the others lay down on the ground. Hearing this, everyone followed Wuji and lay down on the ground without thinking. Then, rows of thick arrows flew out from the holes in the wall. Swoosh, 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 countless arrows were shot from three sides, brushing past everyone's faces and the back of their heads. The others were close to Wuji and immediately lay down when they heard the command. Wang Yu was studying the stone in his hand at the stone door. He didn't pay attention to what Wuji said at all. By the time he realized that he had fallen into a trap, the arrows had already flown behind him. In the blink of an eye, Wang Yu pounced to the side and behind the statue on the right. The statue was more than 2 meters tall and perfectly covered Wang Yu. After a series of clanking sounds, the stone room finally quieted down. Everyone lay on the ground and confirmed that the machine arrows had been used up. Only then did they stand up and glanced at Wang Yu angrily. Wang Yu pointed at the small stone in his hand and felt wronged. The designer is so shameless. I can't do anything about it. But at this moment, everyone's expression became extremely ugly. Wang Yu stretched out his arm and lazily placed it on the shoulder of the statue, holding the giant sword. He wondered, "What's wrong with you guys? There's something on my face." Before Wang Yu could finish his sentence, he suddenly felt the arm on the statue's shoulder move, and a murderous intent followed. Wang Yu turned his head abruptly and saw the statue, holding the sword with both hands and swinging it at his neck. "Damn you!" With Wang Yu's skills, he cursed silently and bent down slightly. The giant sword brushed past him, and he reached out with his knees to grab the statue, But for some reason, Wang Yu's godly grabbing technique that had always been successful did not work this time. The statue that was supposed to be grabbed did not move at all. When Wang Yu's knee strike landed on the statue's body, he felt as if he was grabbing a rock. He knew that he had met a tough opponent, so he immediately let go. At that time, the statue freed up its left hand and reached out to grab Wang Yu. Wang Yu raised his leg and kicked the statue's crotch. He used the recoil to fly backwards and easily evade the statue's grab. Just as Wang Yu let out a long sigh of relief, the other statue holding the box suddenly moved. The statue holding the box was very wretched. It took a step back and opened the box. A black light flew towards Wang Yu. Wang Yu threw the small stone in his hand forward and at the same time activated Night, jumped to appear beside Wuji and the others. The black light from the box hit the small stone that Wang Yu had thrown, and the small stone instantly disappeared. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but let out a huh and use their detect spells on the two statues. Sword Divine Guard, Jean Deli, LV 65, Dark Old Boss, HP, MP, 0 skills, Blade Storm, Mighty Sword / Talent. Indestructible background introduction. Jean Deli was originally a master from the celestial realm. He guarded this place to prevent greedy mortals from coveting the treasures of God. The divine sword in his hand is indestructible, and the indestructible body is the strongest body. Seal Divine Guard, Argent Deli, KV 65, Dark Old Boss, HP, MP, 1000000 skills. Seal Box, True Seal Box. Talent, Body of God background introduction. Indestructible was originally a master from the celestial realm. He guarded this place to prevent greedy mortals from coveting the treasures of God. The sealed box in his hand can seal everything. The body of God cannot be damaged by ordinary weapons. Chapter 876. Why are the settings of these two things so familiar? After seeing the attributes of the two monsters, everyone had the same thought. One used a sword to slash people, while the other used an object to store people. Furthermore, it felt like they had heard these two guys' names somewhere before. Just as everyone was puzzled, Indeli, who was holding the box, pointed it at them and shouted, "I'll call you. Do you dare answer? F****K. It's the Golden Horn King and the Silver Horn King." Hearing this familiar line, everyone reacted. Weren't these the F***King, Golden Horn, and Silver Horn brothers from Journey to the West? Back then, these two idiots had come down to the mortal world at the request of Guanyin, the Tao ancestor, and even Sun Wukong had suffered a great loss at their hands. This was classmate Little Silver's most famous line, as well as other famous lines from the same period. "You're the reinforcements the monkey invited." They were all China people, and who hadn't read Journey to the West? The box in Little Silver's hand was a divine weapon. They absolutely couldn't answer this grandson's name, or they would be killed in a second. At this thought, everyone made up their minds. Even if you F***King call me Grandpa, I wouldn't answer. But when classmate Little Silver opened his mouth, everyone directly coughed up blood. "Yalai card ink." Her coquettish voice made all the men's ears go soft. Everyone was dumbfounded. Wuji, Mingdu, Chun Xiang, to place one's pride, as well as several of Captain Don't Shoot subordinates, were directly swallowed by the box. What's going on? Seeing that half of the team had been instantly cut in half, the rest were dumbfounded. No one had answered just now. Why were they all gone? At that moment, Exquisite Dream said angrily, F***K, these perverts deserve it. Wang Yu was still conflicted. What does this have to do with being perverts? Cut the crap, beat him up. Exquisite Dream raised her hand and shot an arrow at Silverhorn. Indeli, let's call him Silverhorn for short. Silverhorn didn't move. He lifted the lid of the box and swallowed Exquisite Dream's arrow. At the same time, Goldhorn, who was next to Silverhorn, also rushed over with his sword. Upon seeing this, Captain Don't Shoot raised his hand and released a dark boundary to stop Goldhorn. Jin Jiao was even more straightforward. When he saw the barrier rise, he expressionlessly swung the long sword in his hand and slashed at the darkness barrier. The captain's don't shoot skill was directly broken. The pitiful party leader's don't shoot skill was forcefully interrupted and suffered backlash. The HP bar above his head dropped by 1/5. At this time, Yin Lao Air had already charged in front of Jin Jiao, his shield fiercely hitting Jin Jiao's body. -0, a shield warrior's momentum was heavy and had high priority. Their charge had a knockback effect, so even a boss could barely move. However, not only had Jin Jiao not been knocked back, he hadn't even moved an inch. He hadn't even lost a single HP. This kind of priority and defense was simply shocking. Yin Lao Air's reaction was very fast. Seeing that charge was ineffective, he raised a shield in his hand and smashed Jin Jiao with a shield bash, attempting to stun him. -0, there was no damage at all, and the Golden Horn was still indifferent. He didn't expect this guy to not be affected by any control skills. Not only was the knockback ineffective, but even the stun didn't work. Jin Jiao was also a boss, so how could he just stand there and let others hit him? Just as Yin Lao Air was about to attack again, Jin Jiao's longsword had already descended. Yin Lao Air hurriedly raised a shield. With a loud, ear-piercing sound, Jin Jiao's longsword slashed at Yin Lao Air's shield, creating sparks. Yin Lao Air's equipment block value was immediately depleted. F***CK. Seeing this, Yin Lao Air was terrified. Yin Lao Air's Divine God Shield was a godly weapon at this stage of the game. Not only were its attributes amazing, but its special effects were also quite powerful. Just the block value alone was nearly twice that of an ordinary player. Just how high was the damage of Jin Jiao's sword? For Yin Lao Air, if he could win the dungeon, then so be it. If he couldn't, then so be it. It wasn't Xuanjin's anyway, and he had already received the money. There was no need to sacrifice his precious shield. Therefore, Yin Lao Air hurriedly rolled backward and switched the shield in his hand to a shining golden two-handed greatsword. Once again, he faced Jin Jiao. Jin Jiao didn't care about Yin Lao Air's temper and smashed his sword again. Yin Lao Air raised his longsword, and his sword and arm were cut into two by Jin Jiao. Damn it, what kind of attack is this? Just now, no one knew how high the block value of Yin Lao Air's shield was, so they didn't know about Jin Jiao's attack power. Now, however, Yin Lao Air had a real golden greatsword in his hand, and it was cut in half just like that. The damage was absolutely terrifying. After Yin Lao Air's arm was cut off, he was about to retreat when Silver Horn opened the lid of the box and aimed at Yin Lao Air. Then, a black light flew out and went straight for Yin Lao Air. Come back. At that critical moment, Wang Yu grabbed Yin Lao Air's waist with his grasping cloud hand and pulled Yin Lao Air in front of him, dodging Silverhorn's box. Everyone wiped the sweat off their foreheads. Thankfully, Silverhorn's box wasn't a directional one, or else they might as well just surrender. While everyone was still in shock, Silverhorn shouted again, "I'll call you. Do you dare to answer?" Then, Silverhorn turned into a coquettish female voice again. "Come on, have fun. As the saying goes, learn from the mistakes of others and learn from the mistakes of others." Everyone had already learned their lesson just now. When student Silverhorn shouted the first sentence, everyone hurriedly stopped thinking. For a moment, other than Wang Yu, everyone stood rooted to the ground, their minds blank. They were enlightened, even more enlightened than an enlightened monk. This game was really specialized in cultivating talents. Even the current professional monks couldn't get rid of all distracting thoughts in an instant, but this group of guys did it. Everyone ignored Silverhorn's shouts. Silverhorn shouted for a long time like a coquettish woman, and only quieted down when he saw that no one was caught. At this time, Jin Jiao had already rushed to the front of everyone's formation and slashed at the shield warrior in the front row. Without thinking, the shield warrior instinctively raised his shield to block. Sizzle. There was another ear-piercing sound, and the shield warrior was cut in half along with his shield. He turned into a white light and disappeared. Why didn't he think about who he was? Yin Lao Air had the Divine God Shield in his hand, but he could only resist Jin Jiao's attack. How dare this guy imitate Yin Lao Air? After Jin Jiao ended the shield warrior's life, he raised his sword and charged at the people who were meditating on the spot. At that moment, Wang Yu flew in front of Jin Jiao and kicked Jin Jiao's wrist with a thunderous kick. Bang! Jin Jiao was still unharmed. His hand didn't even shake after being kicked by Wang Yu. He casually changed from a vertical slash to a horizontal sweep, and his long sword slashed at Wang Yu. Wang Yu lowered his head and dodged under Jin Jiao's arm. He turned behind Jin Jiao and raised his palm diagonally. A fire dragon flew out from his palm and hit the back of Jin Jiao's head. Boom, 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 boom. Chapter 877. The smoke dissipated, revealing Jin Jiao's solid body. As the saying goes, smoke doesn't hurt. Jin Jiao was hit by Wang Yu's explosive ultimate, but the HP bar above his head didn't change at all. It was a big -0, as if mocking everyone's ignorance. This time, even Wang Yu had a headache. This wasn't the first time Wang Yu had seen bosses that were immune to damage. However, bosses in the past were either immune to physical attacks or magic attacks. None of them were as flawless as this one. Not only was Jin Jiao unmoved by force or persuasion, but his attack was also terrifyingly high. Didn't that mean he was invincible? If that was the case, then it was even more impossible. The game designers were just bastards. They weren't stupid. How could they design an unbeatable boss? Fortunately, although Wang Yu's attack didn't deal damage, it wasn't without effect. At the very least, Jin Jiao's aggro was pulled by Wang Yu. After being kicked and slapped by Wang Yu, Jin Jiao turned around, waved the long sword in his hand, and chased. Although Jin Jiao had high attack and defense, his movement speed was clumsy. Wang Yu was as light as a swallow, but when it came to escaping, he naturally wasn't afraid of Jin Jiao's pursuit. In just 2 or 3 steps, Wang Yu jumped from Jin Jiao's side to near the stone door. Jin Jiao dragged his clumsy body with heavy steps and chased after him. Seeing the invincible Jin Jiao being dragged away by Wang Yu, the captain don't shoot threw a black magic bomb the size of a soccer ball at Silverhorn. Dark Undead Ball, a Warlock level 45 ultimate skill, was also the most powerful AoE skill for Warlocks at this stage. Once the target touched this magic bomb, the magic bomb would instantly explode into dozens of pieces. It was quite powerful. The captain don't shoot released the Dark Undead Ball, while shouting, "Everyone, attack Silverhorn while Jin Jiao isn't here." Everyone received the order, and the tanks in the front row hurriedly raised their shields to protect the ranged professions. The ranged professions' magic and skills were thrown at Silverhorn like rain. Silverhorn patted the box in his hand, and the lid opened. The black light in the box instantly enveloped all the arrows in magic, even swallowing the captain's ultimate skill. Huh. Silverhorn smiled complacently. Holding the box, he asked again, "If I call you, do you dare?" This time, before Silverhorn could finish his line, Mingjian Daoxue and North Sea Fish suddenly appeared behind him. These two had played together for a long time, and their coordination was quite good. Mingjian Daoxue used Gouge to smash Silverhorn's head, while North Sea Fish stabbed Silverhorn's back with backstab. The two of them, one attacking and one controlling, worked together seamlessly. Silverhorn, on the other hand, was easily controlled by Mingjian Daoxue. Seeing this, the nearby warriors surrounded Silverhorn and began to use Shield Bash. If he hadn't discovered this by chance, Wang Yu wouldn't have known that these two bosses had to harm each other to defeat them. "Big brother, it's all my fault." Seeing Goldhorn being swallowed by his box, Silverhorn held the box up and down with one hand and reached into the box with the other. In the end, he didn't even take out a fart. Looking at the heartbroken Silverhorn, Wang Yu said with a smile, "Little Silver, you'd better surrender and save yourself some physical pain." Silverhorn was just an ordinary program, not even an elite boss. The reason he was crying while hugging the box was just a pre-designed line. At this time, how could he understand what Wang Yu was saying? After reciting the line, Silverhorn hugged the box and suddenly laughed maniacally. "Ah, since my big brother is gone, you can't subdue me now." An NPC was indeed an NPC. His change of emotions when he cried and laughed was really amazing. However, hearing Silverhorn's words, Wang Yu's smile froze. When Silverhorn's box swallowed Goldhorn, it also sucked the deity sword in. Chapter 878. Goldhorn was captured, so Silverhorn had nothing to worry about, but he also had no one to protect him. Just as he was acting arrogantly, Ming Jian Daoxue and Yoyu Baiming appeared behind Silverhorn again. History was strangely similar. Under the control of Ming Jian Daoxue and Yoyu Baiming, Silverhorn was besieged again. However, their attacks were useless other than preventing Silverhorn from running around with the chest. The group of people surrounded and attacked Silverhorn for a long time, but his HP did not drop at all. Seeing that Silverhorn was indifferent to everyone's attacks, everyone wanted to cry, but had no tears. Damn, this boss is too disgusting. Normal attacks don't work on him at all. Normal attacks don't work. Hearing everyone's words, Wang Yu suddenly thought of something. He hurriedly turned his head and said to Inlao Air, who was squatting nearby, without a weapon and watching the show, "Second bro, lend me your weapon." Inlao Air said gloomily, "Isn't it broken?" Wang Yu said, "I'm talking about the shield." "Shield?" Inlao Air was slightly stunned, then said, "Your weapon is so powerful, but it's useless." "What's the use of my shield?" Inlao Air's shield had a lot of durability cut by Goldhorn just now, so he was a little reluctant to take it out. After all, he was working for someone else. How could he bleed for himself? Of course, Wang Yu knew what this guy was thinking, so he said with a smile, "Just take it out. I won't let you break it. When the equipment drops later, you could be the first to choose. How about that?" Inlao Air blushed and said embarrassedly, "Well, Nyogu is too embarrassed to let me choose first. I'm afraid the others won't agree. It's fine, I'll convince them." Wang Yu patted his chest and promised. Inlao Air said doubtfully, "Those bastards, I'm afraid it won't be easy to convince them. That depends on the method." Wang Yu smiled and waved his fist. Inlao Air was startled. He hurriedly took out his shield and threw it to Wang Yu. Only God knew if this man was trying to convince others or himself. The tower shield used by shield warriors was extremely large. Wang Yu, who was nearly 9 meters tall, actually seemed small in front of the shield. Fortunately, grandmasters of combat could use any kind of weapon. Otherwise, Wang Yu doubted that he would be able to lift such a thing. "Get out of the way. Watch me," Wang Yu roared. Dragging Inlao Air's tower shield, he charged at Silverhorn. When the others heard Wang Yu's voice, they couldn't help but look back. They saw Wang Yu dragging his shield as if he was dragging a giant door. It was very comical, and no one knew what he was trying to do. However, everyone was still in awe of Wang Yu. With such a fierce person telling them to get out of the way, even if Wang Yu wanted to take off his pants in front of the boss, no one would dare to disobey. In the next moment, everyone retreated, creating an empty space for Wang Yu. Wang Yu swung his giant shield and ran in front of Silverhorn. He raised his shield and ruthlessly smacked Silverhorn's head. 5745. What surprised everyone was that Wang Yu's attack actually worked. Damn, everyone had used all kinds of methods and weapons, but Silverhorn was unmoved by force or persuasion. How could he be hurt by a shield with low attack power? Was this guy so strong that he could bypass the rules of the system? Thinking of this, everyone was shocked. Of course, although Wang Yu was strong, he wasn't strong enough to make the system give way to him. Besides, this kind of thing was done by a hacker, not by martial arts. The reason why Wang Yu could deal damage to the boss was because of the shield in his hand. Inlao Air's shield wasn't an ordinary item. It was the shield of God, something he had stolen from God's underling. The double-edged sword in Goldhorn's hand was called the Sword of God. Just from the name, it was obvious that it was from the same system as Inlao Air's shield of God. This was also why other people's weapons were like tofu in front of Goldhorn, but Inlao Air could take it head-on. It wasn't because Inlao Air had 2 more block values than others, but because Goldhorn couldn't destroy this shield in one hit. Moreover, Silverhorn's introduction clearly stated that he couldn't be hurt by ordinary weapons. A shield with God's signature naturally wasn't an ordinary weapon, so it was reasonable that this shield could hurt Silverhorn. Seeing that his guess was right, Wang Yu was very excited. He held the shield in one hand and pointed at Silverhorn with the other. "You guys control him. I'll deal damage. You still need help?" Everyone was very surprised. They thought that Wang Yu taking on bosses alone was a special hobby. Wang Yu was speechless at these guys who didn't take him seriously. He wiped his sweat and said, "What do you guys think? Hurry up, don't stop controlling him." As he said this, Wang Yu raised the shield and smashed it down heavily on Silverhorn's knee. 6114, another number appeared above Silverhorn's head. The shield's damage was a little sad, but it was much better than a useless attack just now. Under everyone's control, Silverhorn couldn't fight back at all. Wang Yu also experienced what it meant to deal damage without thinking. Hateful mortals. However, bosses also had their own pride. Although Silverhorn was a normal boss, he couldn't just be slaughtered like this. Just as Wang Yu was raising her shield and smashing it, Silverhorn let out a loud cry, and a silver light suddenly burst from his body. The silver light flashed, and all the control skills on Silverhorn were dispelled. At the same time, Silverhorn hugged the box with his left hand and reached into the box with his right hand, pulling out a sword. The sword shone with a golden light. It was the god sword in Goldhorn's hand. With the god sword in hand, Silverhorn swung the sword back and swung it in a circle, about to cut down everyone around him. "Get out of the way." Seeing this, Wang Yu suddenly dropped the shield in his hand, smashing it on Silverhorn's instep. At the same time, he raised his foot and kicked Silverhorn's chin with Thunderstomp. Silverhorn, who was swinging his sword, didn't realize that Wang Yu would dare to attack at this time. In a moment of carelessness, he was kicked back by Wang Yu's powerful priority. Because one of his feet was pressed down by Wang Yu's shield, Silverhorn lost control and almost fell to the ground. His attack was interrupted. The surrounding players escaped death. When they saw the indestructible greatsword in the boss's hand, they were shocked and hurriedly ran far away. By then, Silverhorn had already steadied himself. He raised the box in his left hand, and a black light flew toward Wang Yu. Wang Yu knew that this black light was powerful. He quickly turned to the side and barely dodged it. At this time, Silverhorn's long sword stabbed at him again. Seeing Silverhorn's long sword coming at him, Wang Yu smiled slightly. Without dodging, he lowered his head and stepped forward. When the long sword stabbed at him, Wang Yu raised the shield in his hand slightly, using the top of the shield to block Silverhorn's wrist. Then, Wang Yu kicked the bottom of the shield. The entire shield tilted up and supported Silverhorn's arm, wedged between Silverhorn's armpit and the hilt of the sword. Everyone knew that in order to prevent players from stealing their weapons, bosses had equipment protection characteristics. They wouldn't easily let go of their weapons. However, because Silverhorn was stuck on the shield, he couldn't withdraw his sword. At this time, he was forced to let go. Wang Yu had been waiting for a long time. This was the effect he wanted. As soon as Silverhorn's sword left his hand, Wang Yu immediately rushed forward. Before the long sword fell to the ground, he smoothly grabbed the god sword. Chapter 879. Divine Sword, Two-Handed Sword. Epic Attack. 320-450 mana. 320-450 plus 44 Vitality plus 45 Strength Divine Might. Passive skill. Has a 10% to 50% suppression effect on all targets 15 levels higher than the wielder. The lower the level of the target, the more prominent the suppression effect. Oracle. Passive skill. In the name of God, punish the target. Attacks have a 20% true damage limit. Divine Power. Passive skill. Has a 20% chance of destroying gold grade and below weapons. Blade Storm. Active skill. Swings the great sword to deal multiple damage to the target. Divine Might Sword Slash. Active skill. Uses powerful combat chi to control the sword and deals a fatal blow to the target. Class requirement. Knight. Warrior level requirement. 30 background introduction. The sword of a celestial warrior. Possesses unparalleled power. Special skill, Heaven and Earth Crossblade. A true, godly weapon. Seeing the attributes of the divine sword, Wang Yu couldn't help but exclaim. Although Wang Yu didn't have a unique understanding of equipment like Wuji, he had played the game for a long time. Naturally, he could tell what was good and what was bad, putting aside the suppression effect and the shameless true damage. Such a long list of attributes made Old Cow speechless. It was enough to show that this sword was far stronger than normal weapons. At the very least, its attack was much higher than the divine shield. The level requirement of this sword was also not high. It was only level 30. Wang Yu just happened to be able to use it, so he casually equipped it. In the distance, when Yin Lao Air saw Wang Yu throw his shield at the feet of the boss, he was extremely worried. If it wasn't his, then he didn't know how to feel sorry for it. The treasure that Yin Lao Air wanted to hug to sleep was casually thrown to the side by Wang Yu. Yin Lao Air was in a bad mood. The shield was under the feet of the boss. Without a weapon in his hands, Yin Lao Air didn't dare to attack. He could only anxiously remind Old Cow, "Quickly pick up my shield." Oh, hearing Yin Lao Air's reminder, Wang Yu bent over to pick up the shield. However, Yin Lao Air had just lost his weapon and was still in a fit of anger. How could he let Wang Yu pick up the shield so easily? Wang Yu hugged the box and lifted the lid. A black light enveloped Yin Lao Air's shield, and Yin Lao Air put the shield into the box. Seeing this scene, Yin Lao Air was completely dumbfounded. After 3 seconds of silence, Yin Lao Air threw his head back and roared, "Old Cow, I'll fuck you." When the shield was taken away by the boss, Wang Yu's heart sank. Karma sure came quickly. He had just stolen the boss weapon, and the boss immediately returned the favor. This shield was Yin Lao Air's flesh and blood. Seeing Yin Lao Air on the verge of collapse, Wang Yu hurriedly said, don't worry. I'll think of a way to persuade him." As he said this, Wang Yu turned his face to Silverhorn and said, "Brother, give me back my shield. I'll return your sword." Silverhorn wasn't an intelligent NPC. How could he understand Wang Yu's words? He raised the box and aimed it at Wang Yu, using his actions to prove his thoughts. F***CK, this is your idea? Yin Lao Air sat on the ground and punched the ground with both hands. Wang Yu dodged Silverhorn's attack and gripped the hilt of his sword tightly. "Then what do you think we should do?" Yin Lao Air's eyes flashed fiercely. "My shield is in the F***King box. Chop off his arm and take the box." "All right." Wang Yu nodded and rushed to Silverhorn's side in a few steps. When Silverhorn saw Wang Yu coming, he raised the box and was about to hit Wang Yu. Wang Yu took a step back and grabbed the hilt of his sword with both hands. He swung it up and down, hitting Silverhorn's right arm. -34415, a huge damage value floated up. Silverhorn's body swayed from the hit. He opened the box with his left hand and tried to grab Wang Yu. Wang Yu turned his feet and moved behind Silverhorn. He swung his long sword and once again hit Silverhorn's right arm. -24787 Silverhorn also knew that he wasn't good at close combat. After being hit twice, he turned and ran. But how could he outrun Wang Yu? Wang Yu caught up to Silverhorn and raised his sword to hit Silverhorn's right arm. He couldn't catch him, and he couldn't outrun him either. Silverhorn was probably the most miserable boss in history. He had the ability to kill people in one shot, but he couldn't even touch his opponent's shadow. He could only let Wang Yu slash his arm again and again under everyone's gaze. There was a setting in Rebirth called Position Break. If you attacked the same part of the target a certain number of times, that part would be cut off. Poor Silverhorn didn't struggle for long before his right arm was cut off by Wang Yu. Silverhorn had already lost his weapon once, so he was prepared this time. Before his right arm was cut off, he grabbed the box with his left hand in time. At the same time, Wang Yu's sword fell on Silverhorn's left arm. The others nearby wanted to come over and help, but seeing Wang Yu's brutal style, they all stopped in their tracks. What a joke. This guy had the ability to cut a boss into 8 pieces. Did he need them to get in the way? Just like that, Wang Yu used her body technique and speed to slash at Silverhorn's arm again and again. Every slash was perfectly timed. Silverhorn screamed from Wang Yu's slashes, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get away. In the end, both of Silverhorn's arms were cut off, and his health bar emptied. When a dungeon boss died, it always left behind corpse. Silverhorn was originally a stone statue, so he was broken into a pile of stones. How could this be? Yin Lao Air saw that the boss's corpse was gone and was completely anxious. The shield was still on the boss. After the boss died, not even a hair was left. Wasn't this a trap? Wang Yu laughed and kicked away the stones on the ground, revealing a box. Look, what's this? My shield. Yin Lao's eyes were wet. He crawled to the box on all fours, opened it, and put his hand inside. After a few moments, Yin Lao Air pulled out a cloth doll that was half a meter tall. The cloth doll was wearing a green hat. It had a staff in its left hand and a book in its right. Its wretched appearance was very familiar. Seal doll, Chun Xiang. The player's sealed by the box. Do you want to release it? Release. Yin Lao Air was speechless. He threw the cloth doll on the ground in disgust. A black light flashed, and Chun Xiang stood up. Huh? I didn't respond? How did you get caught? Chun Xiang was still puzzled over it. Yin Lao Air said with disdain, You're hard. I didn't respond. There must be a bug in the system, Chun Xiang said confidently. Scram. Yin Lao Air ignored him and continued to loot boxes. He released to place one's pride, Mingdu, Wuji, and the others. Besides Wuji, the others had the same reaction as Chun Xiang. They were all wondering whether they should respond or not. Yin Lao Air sighed and pulled out the last cloth doll. Chapter 880. It was a summoning-type magic tool, and it was even summoning a boss to assist them, although it could only be used once. Everyone had witnessed Goldhorn's incredible bravery. There was no way to deal with this toy. It could be used as a shield without doing anything. Are you selling it? The team leader looked at the rag doll in Yin Lao Air's hands and asked with a face full of longing. I'm selling it. Make a bid. Wuji didn't know the market price of this toy. In short, the price of magic tools was basically the same. Combat tools weren't much more expensive than support scrolls. 3,000 gold. The team leader was a rich man after all. He was generous and directly offered 3 times the price. Take it, take it. Wuji received the gold coins and stuffed the ragdoll gold horn into the team leader's hands. The team leader hugged the ragdoll gold horn with a strange smile on his face. It could be imagined that the team leader was a tall man. The scene of him hugging an ugly ragdoll and laughing foolishly was very frightening. In any case, from then on, Wuji didn't deliberately target this guy. Wuji knew that some rich people, especially the rich second generation, would have a little psychological problem. After the transaction, they continued looting. After one last search, Yin Lao Air finally found his shield that was stolen from him. At this time, the shield no longer had any attributes, and its description was similar to the sealed doll's. Sealed Divine God Shield, a sealed equipment. Do you want to unseal? Of course, there was no need to ask. If he didn't unseal it, Yin Lao Air would painstakingly pull out a pile of wretched men. Without any explanation, Yin Lao Air chose to unseal it. System notification. Please pay a processing fee of 3,000 gold. F*CK. Seeing the system notification, Yin Lao Air almost threw the shield away. Meow. The system really ate people without spitting out the bones. 3,000 gold was enough to buy a very good weapon. This guy really dared to ask for it. What's wrong? Wuji asked in confusion. It costs money to unseal it. Yin Lao Air said helplessly. I need money. Wuji frowned and said, in order to save our second brother, he almost lost his weapon. I can't let you pay for the unsealing fee. Don't you think so, boss? Wuji emphasized the last 2 words, boss. Saying this, Wuji turned to ask the team leader not to shoot. Not only were Wuji and the others rescued, but there were also a few people from Finger Heavens. Moreover, Yin Lao Air's shield was sealed, which was considered a work injury. Naturally, the boss had to foot the bill. In Captain Don't Shoot's eyes, face was more important than money. Since Wuji had already said so, Captain Don't Shoot wouldn't lose his dignity as a boss just because of a little money. So he asked Yin Lao Air, how much does it cost to unlock the seal? Just as old E was about to reply, he received a private message from Wuji. Glancing at the chat box, old E said bitterly, 5,000. Damn, are you kidding me? Even Don't Shoot, who had seen the world, was shocked when he heard the price. No matter how rich Don't Shoot was, he had never seen such an expensive service fee. It was like taking a taxi from home to buy groceries 500 meters away, and the driver asked for 500 yuan. It was unimaginable, no matter how rich he was. It's true. You can try if you don't believe me. Yin Lao was still frowning. All right, 5,000 it is then. Don't Shoot was so kind, he naturally wouldn't try it. Moreover, Don't Shoot knew that these guys from Chuanjin were not poor. If it was only a service fee of tens or hundreds of gold, Yin Lao probably wouldn't even ask for it. Since the tycoon was paying the bill, Yin Lao did not say anything and immediately unsealed the shield. Immediately after, a purple light sprinkled on the shield, and the black seal on the shield was slowly peeled off. After the cutscene animation was over, the shield in second OL2's hands changed drastically. From its previous appearance, it had turned into a simple and heavy giant shield. The giant shield was engraved with magic runes, and magical imprints flowed on the shield, emitting a purple halo. Everyone was slightly stunned when they saw this, and then shouted in unison, epic tier equipment. They did not expect the so-called unsealing to be the removal of all the seals on the shield. Shield of the Divine God Shield. Epic attack. 200-200 mana. 200-200 physical defense. 500-500 magic resistance. 500-500 strength plus 60 vitality plus 60 durability. 100000. To not exaggerate the number of words, please refer to the previous chapter for the specific attributes. That's right, Old Cow was an honest author. Divine God's Believer. Active skill. After activation, the player will have a 50% chance of being immune to damage for a certain period of time. After the status is over, the damage received will be converted into the player's HP. Class requirement. Knight, warrior level requirement. 30, -15. Item introduction. A holy item brought down from heaven to the mortal world. It possesses unimaginable power. Special skill, Holy Shield Defense. When the player's HP is below 10%, this status will be triggered. For 10 seconds, all units within 300 meters of the player will be immune to attacks. When Yin Lao's second displayed the shield's attributes, everyone immediately drooled. Aside from the shield's main attributes being maxed out, the Shield of the Heavenly God had two more attributes that were even more overpowered than the Shield of the Heavenly God. What was the most important attribute of a tank? One was that it could take a beating, and the second was that it deserved a beating. With this shield, it would be difficult for Yin Lao to die, even if he wanted to. No wonder the fee for unsealing the shield was so expensive. You really get what you pay for. The attributes of the Divine God's shield made the team leader, who originally thought that he had been tricked, feel that the money spent was worth it. On the other hand, Wuji lamented, "Damn, if I had known earlier, I would have said 10,000 gold." Solid as a Rock looked at Yin Lao's shield, and then looked at his own shield. Solid as a Rock, who was originally extremely treasured, now felt that the shield in his hand was a piece of broken iron. This mother of Asterisker was practically the leader of the shield world. Epic was epic. It was definitely an existence that dark gold equipment could only look up to. As for Yin Lao with the Divine God shield in his hand, he actually had the thought of competing with Wang Yu. Yin Lao very accurately demonstrated the main attribute of a tank that deserved a beating. He pointed at Wang Yu and provoked, "Come, Old Cow, let's have a round or two." "Sure." Wang Yu smiled and flashed behind Yin Lao. He stretched out his hand and sent Yin Lao tumbling. This dealt a heavy blow to this kid's arrogance and ego, allowing everyone to breathe a sigh of relief. After obtaining such a good piece of equipment, everyone felt a little unbalanced. Yin Lao lay on the ground with his eyes looking up at the sky. He wailed, "Why can't I beat him?" Wang Yu smiled and said, The gap between our skills can't be made up for with equipment. Moreover, my weapon is also epic. F***CK. In Lao Air finally closed his eyes and stuffed the shield back in his bag. That's great. Why am I not a shield warrior? Looking at In Lao Air, who was overjoyed after being sent tumbling by Wang Yu, Bao San was extremely envious. Even though In Lao Air had been defeated with the Divine God's shield, Bao San knew that this was not an issue of equipment. Chapter 881. Hee. Wang Yu flipped his hand and took out a greatsword. He handed it to Bao San and said, "This is for you." The sword was surrounded by purple light, and its shape was very similar to the Divine God's shield. It exuded a simple and unadorned aura. It was the Divine God sword that Wang Yu had cheated from the boss. When he saw that Wang Yu had given the Divine God's sword to Bao San, In Lao Air immediately became anxious. "Old cow, didn't you say that I could choose the equipment first?" In Lao really had a deep understanding of the essence of the Chuanjin sect. He had displayed his shamelessness to the extreme. He had long coveted this heavenly god sword. He didn't know why a shield warrior would want a two-handed sword. "Did I say that?" Wang Yu scratched his head. "Of course. You said that you would help me persuade the others." In Lao Air said. "Oh." Wang Yu nodded and forcefully stuffed the Divine God's sword to Bao San. "Hurry up and put it away. Don't let second bro see it." In Lao Air, Bao San took the sword and looked at its attributes. He instantly smiled. "Thanks, old cow," In Lao Air said with a dark expression. "Old cow, there's no such thing as cheating." Wu Ji interrupted. "How can we be shady when it's our own people's business? That shield of yours was obtained from a chest. If you want that sword, then I'll give that shield to Bao San." "How can this be considered as being obtained from a chest? It's clearly..." In Lao Air was just about to defend himself when Wu Ji pointed at a movable rock, who had a dumbfounded expression on his face. When he saw a movable rock's equipment, In Lao Air tactfully shut his mouth. All of a movable rock's equipment could be considered a boss's loot after being in the boss's stomach, let alone his own weapon. All right, let's continue. Seeing that the Chuanjin sect's people had picked up yet another good item, Captain Don't Shoot felt even more displeased. Then, he watched as In Lao Air finished looting the chest and led his men back into the sect. Quan Jun and the others were overjoyed to receive the equipment and gold coins. They didn't care that their party leader wouldn't fire at them, and they eagerly followed after them. However, at this moment, Wang Yu suddenly ran to the side of the chest. "What are you doing, old cow?" Wu Ji saw that Wang Yu had fallen behind, so he turned around and asked in confusion. Wang Yu pointed at the box and said, "Why doesn't anyone want this thing?" When everyone heard Wang Yu's words, they couldn't help but laugh. "Haha, old cow, are you kidding me? You idiot." In the game settings, treasure chests were the same as game corpses. They could only be touched, but not taken. Only a noob like Wang Yu could ask such an illogical question. The players from Point Sword in the Sky were even more stunned. Who would have thought that the #1 expert in Yu Huicheng didn't even have common gaming knowledge? However, the next scene made everyone shut their mouths. Wang Yu bent down and really picked up the chest. That's impossible. Isn't the game setting that treasure chests can't be picked up? Everyone looked at the chest in Wang Yu's hands, and their eyes almost popped out. This is the chest in Silverhorn's hands, not some treasure chest, Wang Yu said as he displayed the chest's attributes. God of Wealth sealed treasure chest, magic item, legendary, money seal, active skill. Seals all targets within the skill's range. Skill's range is 300. Consumes 10,000 gold coins per use. Money brand, active skill. Seals all branded targets. Skill's range is 2,000. Consumes 20,000 gold coins per use. Brand password not set. How the F***CK is this a magic item? This must be a scam. Everyone reached a consensus regarding the treasure chest in Wang Yu's hands. Damn, it cost 10,000 gold coins to use it once. Normal players couldn't afford to use it once even if they worked hard for their entire lives. Moreover, monsters with low strength were naturally not worth spending money on. Everyone was rushing to kill invincible big bosses to find good items. Even if they had money, they wouldn't be willing to put it in the chest. In the end, the purpose of this thing's existence was to seal the players' wallets. Whoever used it was an idiot. No matter how disgusting a fly is, it's still meat. It's better than nothing, Wang Yu muttered and stuffed the chest into his bag. Without the protection of the godly general, the magic runes on the stone door began to shine. Everyone walked to the door of Wufang Temple, and the stone door opened and sucked everyone in. The scene changed, and everyone was inside the temple. Wufang Temple, as the name suggested, was a temple. It had a standard Eastern architectural design with painted corners and cornices. It had a unique flavor in this Western fantasy world, but the scene in the courtyard was very different. The NPCs in the courtyard were the same as the previous two scenes. They were all humanoid monsters, dressed almost the same, but some looked fierce and some looked normal. Fierce Monk, LV65, Elite, HP, 250000 MP, 50,000 skills, Dominating Fist Dance, Soaring Dragon Talent. Tempest Storm Wufang, Temple Guardian, LV65, Elite, HP, 200000 MP, 100000 skills, Flame Dragon Palm, Ice Dragon Break Talent. Vital Energy Shield. Everyone was very familiar with the skills of these monsters, because they were the common skills of the Grandmaster of Combat. Dominating Fist Dance and Soaring Dragon Break were the level 45 and 50 ultimate skills of the second Advancement Monk, while Flame Dragon Palm and Ice Dragon Break were the level 45 and 50 ultimate skills of the second Advancement Chi Manipulators. Even though the Grandmaster of Combat had always been criticized, the ultimate skills of each class were still very painful to deal with. Facing these monsters, everyone felt a headache coming on. It cannot be helped. If it was just one or two, they could easily deal with them. But now, the entire yard was filled with monsters, and the number of monsters was only slightly higher than the number in the second scenario. If they were to act rashly now, even if the opponents were all Grandmasters of Combat, hundreds of ultimate attacks would be enough to blow everyone into smithereens, regardless of their formation. Who the F***CK designed this dungeon? The monsters know the ultimate skills of the players. Are we going to die? Looking at the group of crazy monsters, everyone stood in the corner, not daring to move forward. Why don't we let Bull God try? The leader was finally smart for once, knowing who to ask for help at this time. With Wang Yu's ability, even if he triggered the monster's aggro, he could still lure them to another place and let the others pass. Old Cow, what do you think? Although Wuji was the boss of Chuanjin in name, he did not have the authority to mobilize anyone, not to mention Wang Yu, who was even more arrogant than the boss. I'll try. Wang Yu was also a person who was easy to talk to. Seeing that he had everyone's support, he naturally followed the path and swaggered forward. Looking at Wang Yu's back, everyone held their breath. He was a martial artist, after all, and his fearlessness was something ordinary people did not have. Chapter 882. When the monsters got closer, Wang Yu was surprised to find that these two monsters were different from the others. The other monsters had white names, but these two monsters had blue names. Monk Commander, Saint Rainer, LV65, Leader, HP, 300000 MP, 100000, Chief Guardian, Saint John, LV65, Leader, HP, 250000 MP, 200000. After checking the information of the two monsters, Wang Yu realized that these two were leader monsters. Looks like there's going to be a quest. When the people behind saw that it was a leader monster, the atmosphere eased up a lot. Leader monsters were a special kind of monster. Although they only had the attributes of a normal monster, they had an AI that was not inferior to boss. Most of their role was to issue quests. This kind of monster was not rare. In dungeons after level 30, many dungeons had such a small Easter egg quest system, such as picking herbs or finding a wounded person. They were easy to do and had generous rewards. They were one of the most popular monsters among players and were also known as welfare monsters. As expected, as everyone expected, the two monsters did not attack Wang Yu. Instead, they walked to Wang Yu. Saint Rainer, the monk commander, reached out to stop Wang Yu. St. John said sternly, "Outsider, Wufang Temple is a place of cultivation. It's not a place you should be. Please leave." Wang Yu did not respond to St. John's driving. Instead, he looked around and said in the tone of a player, "Is there anything I can help you with?" Hearing Wang Yu's words, St. John's tone softened. He was no longer as stern as before. He said calmly, "Although I need help, this is Wufang Temple's business. Please leave, outsider." St. John's tone was one of refusal, but it was obvious that he needed help. Wang Yu scratched his head and continued to ask roughly, "Is there anything I can help you with?" St. John said, "You're an outsider, please don't." Before St. John could refuse again, Wang Yu asked in the same tone, "Is there anything I can help you with?" "All right." In the end, St. John wasn't an intelligent NPC. Wang Yu's 3 requests for help made him completely let down his guard, and he sighed. "Brave outsider, can you help me?" Wang Yu smiled. "Of course. Why else would I fight with you? What a warm-hearted warrior." St. John was truly naive to believe in Wang Yu. After praising Wang Yu, he added, "Brave outsider, our monastery is now facing a great crisis. I'd like to hear the details." Once the NPC said this, it meant that they were about to enter the main topic. Wang Yu read his lines step by step. "We are a group of cultivators who believe in God. However, some cultivators have been infected by demons and have gone against God's will. Now, they want to monopolize the monastery. Can you help me?" System prompt. Your guild has triggered the dungeon quest, The Monk's Divergence. Do you wish to accept? Accept. Without even thinking about it, Wang Yu accepted the quest. System prompt. Your guild has accepted the dungeon quest, The Monk's Divergence. Quest rank, none. If you can eliminate the divergence between the monks, you will receive a gift of gratitude from the leaders of the monks. Eliminate divergence? What do we do? Seeing the sudden appearance of the quest in the quest panel, Wang Yu and the others were dumbfounded. It was common knowledge that once a person's way of thinking was fixed, it was very difficult to change it. Even if one possessed the ability to kill the other party, it was not necessarily possible to change the other party's way of thinking. That was especially true for religious believers. They had been brainwashed by the teachings of their religion and were extremely stubborn in their way of thinking. Once it was formed, it would be hard to shake them. Additionally, these people had very extreme personalities. They would constantly feel that they had the obligation to send those who did not share their beliefs to God. Wang Yu and the others were game players. They were not senior clergy members, nor were they multi-level marketers. It would not be easy for them to reach a consensus. Are there any hints? Wang Yu asked with a troubled tone. For Wang Yu, changing the way of thinking of others was much more difficult than killing them. Besides, given how stupid Wang Yu was, how embarrassing would it be if he got brainwashed by the NPCs? St. John smiled bitterly and said, "If there was a way to make them realize their mistakes and mend their ways, I would not be bothering you." St. John's reply was very realistic. His response caused everyone to collapse. The S-class quest even had a hint. This quest was completely out of their reach. "How about you, Wuji? Go and sway them for a bit." Wang Yu turned to Wuji. Wuji had the highest academic qualifications among them. Additionally, he was also very good at making twisted arguments. He should be able to speak the same language as these religious believers. "I'm a highly moral scientist. Sway them for this matter." Wuji pointed at Chun Xiang, who was standing beside him. Chun Xiang usually liked to play tricks. He would read people's faces and feel their bones whenever he had nothing to do. Chun Xiang could be considered a rather professional swindler. Unexpectedly, Chun Xiang waved his hand and said, "I only swindle young girls and young married women." "Hey, Mingdu, don't you usually like to talk?" Mingdu twisted his neck and said pretentiously, "When it comes to my profession, smashing and robbing suits me better." Everyone was speechless. "Dao Xue, what about you? You're a businessman." Dao Xue asked in return, "Do cultivators also do business?" "Of course. Look at Shaolin Temple. In the game, everyone was speechless again. The cultivators in the game were a group of people who cultivated by faith, unlike those filthy temples in real life. Xuanjin only had a few people who were good at swindling and swindling. Now, all of them were dead, and the situation fell into a stalemate. If the people from Xuanjin couldn't do it, then there was no need to mention those fellows from Finger Heaven. These people were all players with no personality. They followed Captain Don't Shoot blindly, and Captain Don't Shoot was best at throwing money. They were cultivators. If you threw money at them, wouldn't they chop you up? Just as everyone was at their wits' end, Wuji suddenly asked, "May I ask where the lost cultivators are?" St. John pointed to the courtyard next door and said, "Our classes have long been separated. They and their leader are now living in the side courtyard." "Oh, I see." Wuji nodded and said, "Then may I ask, if we can eliminate your differences, what reward will you give us?" St. John said, "It depends on your performance." "Oh." Wuji rubbed his chin and said, "I do have a way to resolve the differences between you two. However, I've been cheated too many times, so I don't feel safe. Can you give me the reward first?" You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.